You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 559, a time-honored tradition here on the Cantina Cast, where we're going through the final hype, which is it's the show before the show. It's our last minute to kind of talk about everything about the Acolyte tonight, speculate on whatever else is still out there, talk about all the interviews that have happened recently, all of the TV spots that we've gotten, just everything that you need to know, getting ready and on the cusp of the show. We're recording this today on May 30th, so we're literally just 4 days away from this thing, 5 days away at this point. So with me tonight to pull this off is Jonesy. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. This is a great show. This is a great tradition. I really like that we do this because, other shows do this too, so it's not like we're special in any kind of way, but very rarely do you get a show that'll do a deep dive in general, and then we do it right before the show and really put our hearts on the line and our egos on the line and our fragile
reputation.
Our fragile self-worth, are all on the line for everyone to see, and all of our crazy predictions and what we think. And I looked at like Razor Crest moment for this week. I'm like, I don't even know where to begin, like with this series, because we just don't know what to expect, because we're being told to expect the unexpected, right? So
yeah.
But it's gonna be a lot of fun. We already got a lot of great people out in the chat tonight, so this is gonna be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to this one. We'll see how long it goes. If you want to put over under right now is 2 hours. Everybody over under. Put your bets in with Vegas right now.
Yeah, 2 hours is probably going to be about right. We'll see. We might be able to keep this under an hour and a half, or about an hour and a half. But hey, you know what?
Famous last words.
Famous last words, exactly. But before we get started, why don't you give some shout outs to some very special people that are with us tonight?
Yeah, a special thanks to all of our Patreon members first. We certainly appreciate all of the support. If you're curious about Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon is where you can go to learn more. We have some really fantastic tiers, especially those of part of the tribe. Danny, Rob, Mike, Lauren, Dante, Rist, Justin Jackson, Truckman, Dan, Daz, Isabella, Uncle Leon, Josh, Jacob, and Reader Reborn, some of which are in the chat with us tonight. And then Delusions Greater members. Now, this is Rod Racing, CJ, Steve, and Daz. Thank you all so much for your continued support of the show. And then if you are listening to this, thanks for the download. If you'd like to come out and join the live stream and join some of these amazing people in the chat who are going to have amazing questions, a lot of comments, we're going to throw them up on screen. Steph, Sky, JJ Skywalker, One Up versus CPU, Reader Reborn, Skywalker's Academy, and even Alex showed up on time tonight. So, well, on time enough for Alex. So we're very happy to have y'all out there. And if you have any questions, do throw them out there. We captured some on Discord and social media already. But if you have any others that come up during the show, let us know. We would love to put them up on screen and, ruminate a little bit about them.
Yeah. Thank you guys all for being here on the live stream. Very important. And we've got some questions. We'll probably spend the majority of this conversation on the questions that have been submitted and questions that we've collected from Discord and stuff that we've covered in previous podcasts and breakdowns of the Acolyte. We've aggregated all of that together. So if you're with us on the live show and you haven't submitted something, feel free to do. Even if you have, feel free to throw it in there. We'll certainly get to those as time permits. But we've got a whole lot of stuff to discuss when we get to that portion of the show. And I guess without further ado, let's jump into this. Let's get on to it. And so, again, we're going to start with something we've always called tail of the tape, or in Origins. And that's just really kind of bringing everybody up to speed, or reminding folks exactly how all this even started. So I'll try to make this very quickly, because I think there's not a lot here has really changed, honestly, now, even 2 years later, 3 years later, now that we know more.
This has been one of the more straightforward development shows.
Exactly.
Actually. A little bit of a delay, but other than a little bit of the delay, this has pretty much been a straight arrow, from a fan point of view, at least.
Yeah. We'll see if anything comes out later down the road. But as far usually by now, we're like, oh my gosh, they were in production hell and this happened. We had a writer's strike, and this did kind of start its origins back during COVID. So I don't want to, gloss over that or pretend that didn't exist. But from a truly just production standpoint, the atypical stuff aside, you're right. It's been pretty straightforward. So originally pitched back in 2019. That's crazy to even think that. It's 5 years ago now.
Wow.
We first started talking about this back in 2020. It feels a while ago, but it did 4 years ago. You and I covered that when they did it at the Disney Investors Day, and we got our first glimpse of it. I went back and watched it because I couldn't, honestly, I remembered the logo, and I remember Kathleen Kennedy coming out and talking about Leslie Headland and how she was Russian dolls and that sort of thing. But I couldn't remember exactly what happened, and it's pretty short. Like there's not a lot there that they released or announced at that time. But the production is estimated to have started somewhere between October of 2022 and likely wrapped up with everything sometime around June, late May, June 2023. So about a 6-month production time beginning to end. Interesting enough, this one just came out here. Let's talk about this, the budget.
Oh, this is huge.
So $180 million was the budget for this. Now, there are only 8 episodes, so that breaks out to about $22 million per episode. If you want to compare that to, let's talk about Skeleton Crew. And I didn't get a chance to go back and look at some of the other ones, so I apologize. But I wanted to kind of talk about the more relevant ones, the ones that are here. Skeleton Crew is budgeted for $136 million. Now, that's less, and I think we don't know how many shows are going to be in that, right? If it's 6, then maybe it averages out about the same. If it's 8, 12, then they're going to be under budget. But Andor, surprisingly, was $250 million, and that had, 12 episodes, 18 episodes, whatever it was. The breakdown is $22 million. So all that said, what I'm saying here is the Acolyte has a per budget amount similar to what Andor has. Now, your thoughts on that? I didn't really think that was going to be the case, but I mean, it looks like that to me. Like the production quality at times looks on par with that. And we've seen a lot of feedback from our friends that have seen the first 2 and the first 4 episodes that have said this really is kind of that same caliber, of that same quality. But your thoughts on the budget and how much we're getting per episode here?
Yeah, I mean, we have expectations now. This is going to be very cinematic, not only because of what we've seen, but of course what we've heard from others in kind of our peer group. And yeah, I caught wind of this a couple weeks ago. Actually, it started the rumors or the noise kind of surfaced that this is going to be one of the most expensive Disney Plus shows, period, and at least one of the most expensive Star Wars shows, period. And it's definitely lived up to this. I think this is it's great that they're willing to spend the money and invest it in Star Wars content and giving us really high quality visuals and actors and all the things that go in this, where you really do need to spend the money. We know this is going to be really heavy on practical effects. So a lot of that money goes into that. It's a Star Wars, it's sci-fi, it's fantasy. You're going to have a big visual effects budget regardless, both digital and physical. So, it's going to go into it. Stepping back from all that, it's concerning though still, because from a Disney investment case, like Disney can't stop spending tons of money on content. And while we really want that to be good and we feel like that's a positive that they're willing to do it, you have to worry about the longevity about some of this if they don't perform where they want, and how are we going to keep sustaining this. So on one side, I'm very excited about this, that we're willing to invest, especially into a very new, this isn't a new IP, but for live action, it is very new. It's a new IP. It's a new era for us. There's a lot riding on it. So I'm really pleased that we get the investment there and that they're willing to throw the money at it. I think with strikes and things like that, there were probably some delays, and we know they probably had to come back around and finish some stuff up a little bit later. That does balloon your budget a little bit, but I'm happy to see the investment. Overall, from a company standpoint, still really concerned about how expensive this stuff costs if I'm an investor in Disney. But from a fan perspective, I'm not going to complain until we see it, and hopefully it's money well spent.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Like the money can be a little bit concerning because that could either play in your favor if the show turns out to be wildly successful or even moderately successful, and if it doesn't, there's usually some kind of fallout or blowback at the end of that when it's all over and said and done. We're going to get into a little bit later here of talking about the future, because some of that has already been announced or at least teased out by Leslie and a number of other executive producers of the show. This feels like it is the kind of the new norm, though. $22.5 million. It's a lot of money per episode. I mean, you think about it, it's mind blowing how much money, where does it go, right? But at the same time, yeah, I would echo your thoughts on. That's a great sign of confidence that they're willing to start branching out, getting away from the original trilogy, getting away from those legendary core characters. And this is a lot of pressure. And Leslie Headland just recently has come out. We're not going to get into the more recent quotes in the last couple of days, but there was one where she was talking about she feels the pressure and she understands exactly what's at stake. By the way, when we talk about Leslie, she said there is one thing that I captured here that she said recently that I do want to talk about. But the more I hear about her and the more I see interviews with her, she is swaying the people that are on the other side of the aisle, if you will. Like there are people over there that are like, you know what, I hate Disney, but I like what she's saying, right? Even if the show sucks and it's not what I know, I have no interest in it. I like what she's saying. She seems grounded. She doesn't feel like some of these other, quote, producers or directors or writers or artists that, they have that left a bad taste in their mouths. And so all I'm saying is she's got this is in good hands. So I think that's going to bode well for the series here.
Well, and when someone comes out and starts throwing out Darth Treya and EU and
Right.
KOTOR references, I mean, people tend to be like, wait, who are you again?
Yeah.
Like, and maybe think about this twice, right?
Yeah.
It's clear she knows her stuff. Like, she knows her EU, she knows her legends, and when those things start surfacing, that she snuck elements of that into it or used it, no one really said no, so she just went for it. I mean, you do get a little street cred with some of that. I think those are positive things. So I'm glad to hear. I don't follow it near as closely as you do, but I'm glad to hear that maybe people are at least lowering the walls and open to giving this a chance. I get really worried because the blowback is usually that much harder, but I mean, let's be optimistic right now. And again, I hope people will give this series a chance to really, because this is going to be different storytelling for us too. And I know we're going to go through some of that tonight. So, I want people to keep an open mind with this, because we're not going to be able to gauge this series after 1 or 2 episodes. This is really, we're going to have to go through the whole season and really see how we feel about it.
Yeah. So getting to the episodes themselves. So we've got 8 episodes lined up here. The first one, of course, will be on June 4th. The first 2 will be here on June 4th. Those first 2 are directed by Leslie Headland. The first one is written by Leslie. The second one is written by Jason McAuliffe and Charmaine DeGratte. And the last episode will be on July 16th. That seems forever, but it's not too far away. Right. That one is directed by Hanelle Culpepper and written by Jason McAuliffe. We talk about this just about every Final Hype episode, but when you're looking at all the names, we've got Kogonada on there. Alex Garcia Lopez is a director. And between the 3 of those, I think, or 4 of those are the directors. But any concerns about, shifting directors, shifting writers, because we do have some writers on here, like, for example, there's on episode 5, there is someone named Cor Adana and Cameron Squires. They've not done anything else. Like, you can see some of the other artists, some of the other writers have kind of, in here speckled throughout some of these episodes, but they just kind of come in, do one episode, and they bounce. Any concerns around that, given the past history with other TV series or movies that we've had in Star Wars?
Under normal circumstances, I would probably say, yeah, I have some reservations about it, but I think this is where the Rashomon, that style of storytelling, you can actually play this to your advantage. Because, and if we think about what Rashomon, maybe people aren't as familiar, is basically looking at different interpretations of a story and different interpretations of the truth, different perspectives on what's going on in the same scene. So you see it from multiple angles. And I think this is where, if you have a different writer or you have a different director, you get a different feel. And that could be a really positive thing here. I think that could actually be really interesting to actually dive into the cinematic aspect of it and how that fit into the storytelling and how that maybe shifted the tone, or those types of things. It'll be interesting to see if we notice it and if that plays out. But I think in this type of storytelling, this could really be an interesting way of doing it and really leverage all of the different perspectives of a writer and a director and those different the different styles to really fit the story. But again, but the concern is still a little bit there, though, because you still need, if you're going to go back and bounce to certain characters, you still want that character to feel consistent. And if you have the same writer, the same director, you get some of that. But if you're not, and again, we don't really know the order of who's in what episode. And there's some speculation about which of what we've seen is in which of the 8 episodes. But, with all that, we'll just kind of see how it plays out. But this is going to be interesting to watch, because I think this really could be a cool thing. This could work to our favor.
Yeah. And I don't have any concerns personally myself. I think of this as almost like Tony Gilroy's, vision, right? He wasn't the primary writer or director on all these, although writer he technically was, but he was that through line, similar to what we had with George Lucas in the sequel or in the original trilogy and the prequel trilogy. You've got somebody who's got the reins, and they've brought in a group of people, but kind of the buck stops with them for the most part. And I may be reading into it too much, but based on the interviews that I've seen, everything that I've read about Leslie, it's her vision. This is her story. It's her pitch from the very beginning. And she is kind of that through line. So she is kind of playing that Tony Gilroy position, where she gets to she gets the final say in whether or not somebody goes too far with the creativity or strays away too far from what her vision is. And I think that keeps the barriers, it keeps the borders in place, and allows the show to kind of have a consistency that I think we've seen not there with other Star Wars endeavors in the past here with the Disney era. So
That's
no
a fantastic point. I mean, you're right. It does. Do you have clear leadership and accountability and someone who is steering the ship?
Yep.
Because when you do, those variabilities work in they're able to structure those into your benefit of how the story should feel while still letting them be creative and put their spin on it. They're still telling the overall vision of what you had. She was in the writer's room the entire time, right? Even though her name's not on credits, these things are all funneling through because, like you said, this is kind of her baby. She pitched the whole thing.
Right.
She got a hook, line, and sinker with Kathleen Kennedy. So we know that she's vested. And it's like we saw with the George Lucas quotes from Ken and some of the interviews, right? It's hard to let go of your baby, right? And when you have it, and she's real fresh into this first opportunity, she feels that pressure, but she's got that responsibility too. And she's going to own it. And so she's going to back up her team. But at the same time, I think, like you said, when you have that clear person behind it all, that helps, and that really does benefit. It doesn't feel like a wayward ship like we maybe have with the sequels where was that vision there? Clearly, sometimes yes, sometimes no, right?
Yep.
So here it seems like we still have it. So this is a really good thing.
All right, so 8 episodes, no back-to-back episodes outside of the first 2.
I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that too. I mean, it's only 8 episodes, so come on, guys, we're not into Bad Batch territory here right now.
Let's talk about it. What about episode length?
So this is interesting. Like, there was a lot of rumors, a lot of speculation originally that this was going to be 60 minutes per episode. I think back in it might have been last year, 2023. I've got the quote here from Hedlund. She was talking to Collider. And she said, on average, I would say somewhere between like 30 to 35 minutes. So some longer than others. That feels about right. I know that's, as Star Wars fans, we're always greedy. We bring this up every time when we get to the final hype. And even throughout the course of the series, we always talk about, was that too short? Was it not long enough? Could we have sat through 2 hours of this sort of thing? At the end of the day, I think we're all probably normalizing now on that 30 to 35 minute range. I think on good account here, we know that the first 2 episodes land in around 45 minutes apiece, and we just know that because everybody's already seen it. Right. Or a lot of people have already seen the first 2. So I don't know. I don't have a concern with that. I think if it's 8 episodes, it feels like it's gonna progress very rapidly. So we'll see how that plays out, which I'm excited for. Honestly, I don't know that I'm really the biggest fan these days of 24 season-long episodes of 1 hour each. Just because of time commitment for me more than anything.
Well, and it's fluff. I'm sorry.
Sometimes you're right. Yeah. Sometimes 24 they hours of content.
You're gonna get 12 episodes of fluff at the very least.
Yeah. Right. I can see that absolutely happening, and we see it today even on some of the bigger shows that are out there. But when you're down to 8 episodes and you're sitting at about 35, 45 minutes or 30, 35 minutes on average, that's actually a pretty good. I think that's kind of the sweet spot, honestly, to really tell an engrossing story, not get swept away in the fluff or, what's the word that everybody likes to throw around there. But, I think it's going to be kind of lean and mean. And it means we're going to get to the bottom of who the Acolyte is and some of the larger mysteries of the mythology that we've seen already teased out. I think that's going to come pretty fast and furious very quickly here at the beginning.
Yeah, and I think what bodes well for this 30 to 35 minute range for most of the episodes, and again, like Alex is saying, 45 minutes each for the first couple, but where this really bodes well is that these are supposed to be, there's going to be moments of character pieces with all of this stuff too. And I think 30-35 does give you an opportunity to sit with a character and learn the things about them you need to, but also still put stuff back and, talk and see what the rest of the characters are doing. It's still an ensemble piece, right? All of these other characters are going to be intertwining. We're going to see a lot of flashbacks, so all of these things are going to happen. In 30-35, you can do a lot in 30 to 35 minutes. And we have seen this routinely. We saw it in Bad Batch, like the opportunities that they're able to cram into 22 to 26 minutes is really impressive whenever you have kind of the right material and the kind of right situation, scenario, and character dynamics and all of that. So I think for a live action show, a little bit longer than the animations feels really good. They don't drag on. Do we want 45 minutes to an hour? Of course we do if it's great content. But I think for something like this, bite size, jumping around episode to episode, I think we're going to feel like this is I have a feeling this is going to feel pretty good.
Yeah, no, I'm with you there. No spidey senses are tingling, if you will, at this point.
Right.
Okay, so let's get into now the pitch and the premise. So we've talked about this many times already. Originally, it was pitched as Frozen meets Kill Bill, and that set off the internet.
We had no idea what that meant at one point.
No,
and now
we
we
really
have
didn't.
now we have a pretty good idea what that means.
I think we do now, right? The Kill Bill portion being someone's died and there's maybe revenge, or at least a perceived revenge kind of act at play here. And then the Frozen is the twin sisters. And we'll talk more about that here in a little bit, because there actually have been, I know, if you're spoiler sensitive, I should have prefaced all this. In everything we're going to talk about tonight has been publicly released, either officially by Disney or said by the actors and actresses or the producers or whoever it is on television or through YouTube, or done through interviews online. It's so no spoilers here, right? As far as we're concerned, this isn't anything that's behind the scenes and hasn't been released. This is all stuff that you can find out there on your own. So I say that because you mentioned this. Well, let's save it. We'll talk about the twins and whether or not twins exist. There's been a lot of debate. We've been talking about it here for like the last 2-3 weeks now, ever since the poster was released. And I think we have a hard confirmation at this point that there are twins. But
and quickly, the reason why it doesn't feel like we have it. So first of all, Albert and I have not seen any of the episodes, so we didn't do the screening, nothing like that too. So this is all just this is complete speculation. We've not seen any of it. But there have been over 30 pieces of content released between TV spots, trailers, interviews. I mean, we're probably getting closer to 40 pieces of content. So the media coverage of this and the media release and the advertising blitz, we have not seen something like this in Star Wars, I think, for a TV show at the very least. No. And even for movies, this feels like this would be a lot.
It's on par with like a major motion picture release.
Yeah. I mean, and again, it's been so long, I don't even remember what a movie media blitz looks like.
Right.
But I mean, so just a couple of things just to throw out there. That one, this is our unspoiled opinion. We haven't seen spoilers, we haven't read them, and we haven't seen the content. So everything we talk about really is our speculation and based on, albeit a ton of content that's been released and some interviews, and some of the cast and crew have not been as secretive as they typically are with the NDA clauses and stuff. So
yeah,
but they're all still official and they're still out there. So
yeah,
they're on the table.
One up says, I don't know anything about Frozen. Well, sit right back and
that's our next podcast. Sorry.
We have a Frozen podcast that we're about to spin up here. Also, well, I'm glad he brought this up as well. It says, reminds me of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and The Matrix. And those were definitely influences for this. I think I saw one interview with Leslie where she was talking about how Andor took more of the, the more drama heavy kind of, I forget the exact influence that was mentioned or referenced by her, but she said she wanted to go the opposite way, right? She wanted to have more flash, more of the martial arts, more action style. And so she leaned heavily into Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and The Matrix, and some other things as well. So
I'm digging it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I'm all for it. Like, I don't think anybody, even people that are like, yeah, it looks a little too much, I think they've got on board with it now. It's just, there's something about the choreography, there's something about the editing, something about the directing, the way that's all put together. It's captivating. It's hard not to look. It's hard not to appreciate it when it's good, and that's good. We'll probably see a lot of it coming up here soon. By the way, rumor was that episode 5, there's like heavy action, like 20-30 minutes of just nonstop action. So we'll see. But so here so let's see. So timelines, talking about the timelines, very important. This takes place 100 years before the Phantom Menace. Now, this is confirmed, although not officially by Disney. They have confirmed Vanessa Rowe's age, which she's at 116 years old. So Vanessa Rowe is a character from the High Republic. We'll get into that here in a little bit. But if we know Vanessa Rowe's age in this series, then we can do the math and figure out exactly when this takes place. So this would actually take place around 131 to 132 BBY, right? So definitely right on the end of the High Republic.
I want to say that Leslie Headland's actually confirmed it's 100 years before.
I think they've always said it, but I think we've always, at least how I always interpret it was, it's about 100 years, right? It could be 95, it could be 110, but somewhere in that ballpark. But we know for a fact now it is almost exactly 100 years. Whether there's significance to that, I don't think so. It's just interesting that they picked 100, made it a nice clean number. But yeah, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, and then for maybe the follow-up question there for you is, so from where the High Republic books are at least currently at, what's the gap between that and where we're at right now? It's about another 100 years, right?
Yeah, like most of the people, with exception, and we'll talk about the exceptions, certainly the humans at this point, the humans that we're seeing in phase 3 of the High Republic, which is the current phase, they're not going to be around. You'd be hard pressed to find anybody at that point. There are some theories around some people, if they were to show up, and I've got some whack tinfoil theories around how that could even be possible. But yeah, we're going to be so far detached from what's currently happening in the High Republic. Remember, this is right at the very end of the High Republic. This is almost ushering in the fall of the Empire, or fall of the Republic, or fall of the Jedi, I think, whatever the official term is now, that time period is. So yeah, we're in a transitional period of time, if you will. We've been told that we're going to get some Rashomon storytelling in here. So in true Rashomon, you see storytelling from different people's perspectives, and at the very end, you kind of get one final, here's what really happened kind of thing. A lot of, over the years since Rashomon first came out, people have taken liberties, and it's kind of evolved into a couple different flavors and nuances where, we might see the same thing happen from different perspectives, or maybe you just see the exact same thing happening from different perspectives, and not necessarily different things happening from different perspectives. But we'll see some flavor of that, and that's very clear and evident because we see that we're going to be getting flashbacks on some of the scenes here as well.
Right.
There was 2 pitch lines. We won't talk about those. I mean, nothing's really changed. We just know that. I'll read you the official one, which was the more recent official one in 2024. In the Acolyte, an investigation into a shocking crime spree pits a respected Jedi Master, Li Zhongjie, against a dangerous warrior from his past, Amanda Stenberg. As more clues emerge, they travel down a dark path with sinister forces reveal all is not what it seems. I think that's all pretty straightforward. We had a lot of speculation when that first came out. It's clear as day as far as I'm concerned now, especially with all the trailers and TV spots. But you want to add anything to that?
No, yeah, it's kind of it's so generic at this point with all of the TV spots. It's almost comical, like how basic it is.
Yep.
Because it actually doesn't even feel all of that accurate anymore compared to what we've seen in the,
right.
in the TV spots. So
yeah, it really is a high level kind of pitch, elevator pitch compared to what we know now. So
a lot of looseness in that statement, but whatever. I mean, again, it's just when you're flipping through channels and you're not a Star Wars fan, if you stop on it, does that seem interesting to you, right?
Yeah.
And again, I think the one takeaway, though, is that this is going to be a little bit different from what we're used to seeing with Star Wars. And I think Andor's a good example of that, too. Andor was different for Star Wars storytelling. Yes, it was very much like Rogue One, but Rogue One still had elements of traditional Star Wars in there, right? But Andor took that to another level, much more methodical character building. I think this is going to be a different spin on that, too. And again, this more crime-based and murder mystery type of thing going on. A little bit different than what we're used to. So I think that does set the stage for, hey, be prepared. This is a very different Star Wars.
All right. So the future of this show, more recently, we've had some quotes here from Headland, but I guess let me ask you an unfair question. Maybe it's fair. Maybe it's it's the Final Hype Show. Everything's fair.
Right.
If you had your choice, you're the executive producer, you get to decide how long this thing needs to go. What's the sweet spot for you? Is it 2 seasons? Is it 3? And we have some official kind of quotes here again that will kind of paint the picture, but where would you like to see this thing go?
I like things in 3s, right? I'm kind of an odd number person. 3 is one of my favorite numbers. Trilogies, all the things, seem synonymous. We saw this with Bad Batch too. 3 seasons felt like pretty good. Yeah. Do you want more? Could you do more? Yeah, sure. But I mean,
right.
I think what's really interesting though is, Leslie Headland viewed this as, maybe not a trilogy, but as multiple seasons. And I know we're going to talk about this in a minute, but, and so when I think about that, it's like, okay, she does have maybe an overall arc we want to do, but I really like that each one of these will be self-contained and they don't leave you with the cliffhanger. I think that's really important for us. I think closure in a season. So if it does end abruptly, you at least feel like, okay, that story was at least done. I don't have, like we heard a lot, of course, all the cancellations have been coming out for network TV and stuff in the last several weeks. And you're like, wow, these shows ended on cliffhangers because that's what you do. And so I love the idea that we're not, but I'm thinking, it's 100 years. You could do a few seasons. You could do more than 3 seasons if you wanted to start filling in the gap and start to continue to peel back this layers of these onions that she keeps talking about in some of the interviews of saying, okay, here's just a little bit more of what's going on. Here's a little bit more that keeps getting us more inclined to where we're going at towards, Phantom Menace and some of the other Sith stuff. But I love the idea of, looking at this from the Sith perspective is still kind of what I'm hearing and what she's saying. So I'm really curious if that ends up being, because we see a lot of Jedi on screen, but you could do that over the course of several seasons. That might actually help us get on board with Acolytes and Path of the Dark Side and those kinds of things. Give us a perspective over time to peel back that shadow and peel back that curtain.
Yeah. And I'm with you too. Like 3 feels like a pretty safe number. I don't know if it's my preference, but I'm with you. Like 3 feels good. 5 feels good. 7 feels good. It's something about the odd numbers. I don't know what it is, but, but I would be okay with any of those.
7 feels like a lot, my friend. Not gonna lie.
Feels like almost too much, right? I would agree. But, Clone Wars did it. So, but yeah, I mean, 3, 5, somewhere around there. officially
Clone
at
Wars
this
did it in
point,
3 tries, though. That's the
they
thing.
had, right. It wasn't like they planned it, right? I think they just kind of fell into that. But this series, season 2, for anybody that's worried, are we going to get a season 2? I mean, just write it down now. I mean, everybody has almost literally come out and confirmed that we are at least getting a season 2. To the quote that you had mentioned was what Leslie had said just recently. She said, I would say that when I pitched it, I definitely pitched it as a multi-season show. There are a lot of things at the end of this season that I think are narrative threads that are not tied up for sure. We could make season 2 pretty quickly. We definitely have a timeline. I have a lot of ideas. And again, a lot of that old stuff that Kathleen I told her early on in terms of where I would like the season to go and the conflicts that I see happening specifically in the second season. So definitely season 2 seems set. Season 3 is very possible. I would expect that as well. We have to remember, if Star Wars has taught us anything here since the Disney acquisition, and maybe part of this is around the very end of the Lucas ownership as well. But in 5 years in Star Wars, you can tell so many stories. You think about where we are with the we keep talking about how we keep going back to Tatooine. We keep going back to the original trilogy timeline. That's like 5-10 years, right, that we're playing around with. And it's so dense with content when you think about the movies and you think about books and you think about like the series like Rebels and Andor. And I mean, the list goes on and on, right? So the fact that they're going to carve out, I would say maybe 1 or 2, 3 years, let's just say they keep it linear and it's 3 years for 3 seasons. That's a lot of time. That's 97 years that we have after that for them to come back and entertain more Acolyte type stuff, get more into the dark side, more into the rise and fall of the High Republic or the Republic, the Jedi Order, the rise of Palpatine and whoever his master is. Man, we may get a series called Palpatine at some point where it's just him as a child and it's through his eyes and we get to see that ascendancy, right?
We get to see him say yippee.
Yeah, we get to see him say yippee. So there's a lot of time there. So all I'm saying is, it's rich. The timeline's perfect. Again, whether this was serendipitous, which I think it was, by the way, just to kind of throw that out there. Again, doing the research, I found another interview with her where she was talking about how she originally pitched this around the same time that the High Republic was kind of kicking off. And, although she wasn't talking about the High Republic, she was more interested in this time period and how, the Jedi Order kind of fell, if you will, how the Republic kind of fell,
fit together.
How they fit together. And it just, again, serendipitous that they just happened to be there. And so there was a lot of collaboration and a lot of work that went with both teams, both on Project Luminous at the time and Leslie Headland to kind of marry those two things together and ensure that consistency was there. So, I mean, there's a lot of time here and there's a lot of things that can be told. So I would expect we are going to get to at least 2 seasons, possibly 3. And if we don't get a season 4, we're probably going to get more stuff from the High Republic.
Yeah. I mean, and again, there's a lot of investment going in this. So this is something they're watching really closely because I think Disney wants to make more of this series because it is fertile ground. We have 100 years. When was the last time we say we had 100 years of open space in Star Wars?
Mm-hmm.
Not since Force Awakens, right? Where we said, okay, well, the future is wide open.
Sure.
We're a little they're tied to the past. So there was some restraint there, but to have truly, I mean, with the books, you don't have quite the penetration you have when it comes to all of your viewers that you want to hit from a TV perspective versus a literature perspective. So you have 100 years. You don't necessarily have to go year by year. You can do little jumps in between two. So if, again, it's more about the narrative is still open. It doesn't mean the story continues day over day, right? So you could go a year or 2, but you still have a lot of space. You're not really hurting yourself by doing that, but you've allowed some things to change off screen, which I'm a huge fan of. I love coming back into a story and trying to get caught up into what happened and not have to work too hard at that, but just having a little bit of that. And they have so much room to play with. Now, as you start to get closer to that 20, 30 years before Phantom Menace, things get a little bit more, like you get a little more rigid, I think. But man, even if you just narrow that down to 50, 60, 70 years, that's a long time, right? That's the span of a normal human, kind of, or at least an adult type of age, a mature human, even in Star Wars, right? So a lot of opportunity there. So this is something that they could do a lot with. And if it goes well and if it's well received, then you're right. Season 2 seems all but a slam dunk. And season 3 is, let's see how season 2 goes. But man, we're kind of, we'll sketch that on paper and see what that next idea looks like, especially if we start building more. But I love that we get a season of storytelling and we finish the season. narrative threads might still be available and open, but the story is told. And I think that's something that I'm hoping people will appreciate.
Yeah. Let's see. One up says, "What about the adult nubs, though?" We'll get into that here in a little bit, as far as who could possibly still be around.
Right.
God, I would love to see nubs. I know that sounds silly, but anyways, all right. Speaking of characters, let's quickly talk about the characters. Again, this is kind of a rehash. I don't know that there's anything in here that's new. There was one interesting piece that came out about Kelnaka here, just a little bit, but so we've got Amandla Stenberg playing May and playing a character named Osha. We'll talk about both of those characters here in just a bit. But we know that Osha at least is Soul's former Padawan, so she was Master Soul's Padawan. Jedi Master Soul played by Lee Jung-jae, Khmer by Manny Jacinto, Jack Lee Yon, who is played by Daphne Keene. We have Mother Anicia. That's going to be Jodie Turner-Smith. She's the Force user, a witch of some sort. More on that here in a bit. Vernestra Rowe from the High Republic books and comics. We get to finally see one of the characters carry over. Yord Fandar, Jedi Knight, played by Charlie Barnett. Character by the name of Torben, who's played by Dean Charles Chapman. We haven't seen a lot of him in the trailers and cutscenes. There's probably a reason for that. Jedi Master Indara, who's played by Carrie-Anne Moss, who's already won the hearts of everybody. I mean, people are just gushing over how cool she is.
Yeah.
Rightfully so, of course.
Just watch the trailer. It's hard not to be infatuated with what she's doing. So
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
fantastic.
Kelnaka, Wookiee Jedi Master, and this is something Jonas had just said. Jonas Sutamo, who plays Chewbacca, has played Chewbacca since Disney. He says Kelnaka is intelligent. He's a Jedi, but a little bit vain. He likes the way he looks, so he's going to look after his hair to maintain the sense of who he is. This feels a little different but not uncharacteristic of the High Republic, right? I mean, they all we see them most recently. By the way, they just released a clip yesterday or 2 days ago. There's a TV spot where they actually showed him in their ceremonial garbs officially now, which I thought was awesome to actually see on screen. Oh, I'm so excited as a High Republic fan, but not uncharacteristic of them, right? This is we'll get into the era, but it's certainly not, it's in line with what I could expect from a Wookiee, even though in our heads, it's like naked Wookiee Chewbacca running around with a satchel, right? And that's about all we got. It's a little bit different, but any thoughts around him? And we definitely see and he's got his hair up like in a man bun kind of thing, or man ponytail or whatever that is. But
yeah, and one of versus CP made a really important distinction. So it's Tor Bin, B-I-N, rather than Tor Ban, B-A-N, who is Buckets of Blood. So
Buckets of Blood, yeah,
not the same. Yeah, not the same character. It's not Buckets of Bloods, but Kelnaka is a character that's really, with the later TV spots that have come out and some of the really intense ones that you see with him and with Torben, it looks like that's really got me intrigued. We already speculated a little bit because we do see him as a loner. Some of the descriptions around him, I think, on the Star Wars databank are he's a loner, which is really uncommon for a Wookiee because they're very social creatures, and that type of thing, and usually very genuine. So something's clearly happened, and we've speculated some things, and I'm sure we'll talk about that tonight. But this is a character I'm really getting more and more excited about to understand what happened in the flashback and where they intend to take the character. So we can speculate a bit about that when we get there, but this is a character I'm really excited to see more of. And of course, everybody loves Jonas. He's such a great ambassador for Star Wars and just such a nerd fan of it. So, and he's so nice. You can't help but root for him. But yeah, I mean, the little hair bun, and of course, he actually wears the robes like Kanaka does. And so it's kind of cool to see some of that stuff. But, they did that in the books too. They were all well manicured and well dressed. And so again, some of that vanity of the Jedi has been there for many hundreds of years, not just what we see in Phantom Menace.
Yeah. Yeah. So one up says Torben, but not Torban, aka Buckets of Blood.
Right.
And Zorella Ellen says Torben, Indira, Indara. I've already called Indira on this show at least 3 times, and I'm probably going to screw it up again tonight, but it's just so interesting that they're so close. And I don't know if that was by design or just, again, purely coincidental, but very, very close. Very different names, of course. Star Wars Stuff Podcast. Hey, guys, thanks for joining us. Carrie-Anne Moss embodies and works so well as Jedi. Great casting, it appears. I would agree. I mean, I think you and I talked about it feels like it's Trinity from The Matrix, and I'm like, so what? That's awesome.
I'm totally cool with that.
Give me more of it. I'm here for the Carrie-Anne Moss show.
You just see someone who embodies like the peace and calm, and just calculated in her ability. It's just so cool. It's so cool to see a dominant Force user. It's just so cool. And then Carrie-Anne Moss just plays it so dry and straight-faced and so serious that it's just so perfect. And this is why people want like Keanu Reeves as well, right? Because he brings that same kind of gravitas and that same element to a character that you would love to see within a Jedi or a conflicted Jedi, because he can play those roles so well. And Carrie Ann Moss is very much like that too. She's
Yeah.
a little typecast maybe in some roles of being too serious or whatnot, but man, this one, she just looks absolutely perfect.
Yeah. Stephanie's with us tonight. She's 100% good with that, talking about Carrie Ann Moss as Trinity in Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, if you guys catch the Way Station on Sunday nights with Fred and Ed, myself, Fred has been going on and on about Carrie Ann Moss, and he keeps talking about the breathing. And the more you pay attention, the more he's right. It's just something about her demeanor and how she carries herself. And you get the sense that this is a very powerful, very in control Jedi. And that was important. I want to just kind of quickly just segue into some of the questions and speculation. There are rumors that she will die in the very first episode. That doesn't mean she's not going to be in the series, because we clearly see her in flashback episodes, right? But if they do establish her as this kind of formidable Jedi, quintessential Jedi, model Jedi of some sort, right? And they die, the stakes are certainly high, right? It's a big deal, right? You're exactly right. That's a huge deal. Now the Jedi, I won't go so far as to say they're afraid, but they certainly have everybody's attention, or now the Jedi's Council's attention is focused on who the heck killed Indara of all people, right? So I love that they did that. I think her portrayal is amazing. Again, some of it is, of course her, most of it is all her, but then the way they've just choreographed that and some of the special effects that they've done, and just the way she carries herself is just, I don't know. It's again, when we think about the Jedi of old, not the original trilogy, but what we conceived as the prequel trilogy Jedi, and what we've seen already established in the High Republic, this is an exact carryover of what we're seeing there. So that all stays very consistent. All right. Anything else you want to talk about? We're going to talk about these characters in depth here as we go through the questions, but any other characters that you want to just touch on or briefly mention anything about before we move on?
No, there's some other side characters that have been named, but we're not really sure how they play into things. Some members of the Coven, an ensign, another master. So we've seen some other characters come across, but not a whole lot to go with them quite yet. So we'll reserve those for the actual breakdown episodes when we get there.
All right. Well, let's get into the questions, where we'll spend the next 2 hours, and we're
going to be 45 minutes in, man. We're
45 minutes in. Now, I don't have these.
Someone did take the over, by the I
saw that.
I saw someone took the over. So
Dale said 2 hours. So we'll see where that lands. Let's see. Star says, yep, the nose breathing makes you more Jedi-esque, apparently. Yeah, it's all about deep breaths, man. Qui-Gon taught us that. Okay, so let's get into the questions. Now, they aren't in any really particular order. I was just kind of collecting them from different places. So we may end up kind of fusing some of these together at times, and I'll throw them up on screen. I actually had a chance to get all these put in here. So let's start with a very basic one. And it's, what is the High Republic era of Star Wars? I've seen this question posed a lot, and I think it's rightfully so. Now, I will say this. Leslie Headland has said you don't have to have you don't have to have read anything from the High Republic to understand what's going on here. I think they'll probably do enough. They're going to give you bits and pieces to kind of get you up to speed on what you really need to know. But I don't know. I hate to put you on the spot. Do you want to take a stab at this? There's a lot here to talk about.
Oh my God, it's only been 150 years of High Republic material now. Literally right. 150 years.
Give me all that 150 years if you can, please, in 30 seconds or less.
Like 3 sentences, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so clearly an era, several hundred years, I think it's between 100 and 500 years before Phantom Menace, right?
Right.
This is the light of the Jedi. It's a galaxy of peace. The Republic is expanding. It's the hyperspace lanes aren't as well established. The Outer Rim is still the Wild West, so it's still very dynamic. And the Jedi are, there's tons of them, right? And they are the representatives of peace and justice in the galaxy. When Obi-Wan Kenobi is talking about the Jedi of old, you could very easily equate that to the Jedi of the High Republic. Very skilled, very tight group. And some of the rules that we're used to maybe have a little bit of fluidity to them as well. And some of that's more modern Star Wars storytelling, I think, as well. But again, they've gone through some trials and tribulations, right? We had the Nameless and a really severe threat between them and the Drengir, these plant creatures, as well as the Nihil. But in general, it's a time of peace and prosperity across the entire galaxy, and one of expansion and one of learning and education, establishing great works, and really the Republic expanding and bringing other worlds into what we would later see in the Phantom Menace and in the original trilogy of all of these star systems really truly collective. This is the era where all of that stuff really started to take shape and significantly kind of bond the galaxy together within the Senate, and bringing new systems, as well as, and going, well, and really just kind of expanding it overall. But
Yeah.
the Nihil had been a big threat, but there's no civil war, there's no giant wars, and even the Nihil are a big deal, it's not on the scale of the Galactic Empire and the Civil War that we saw in the original trilogy.
Yeah. I think by all accounts, you could argue the balance is in place here, right? Balance in the Force is here. It's still here, of course.
Right.
I think honestly, you did a great job. Honestly, I don't know that you really left anything out. I would say, I was going to say they're probably on their butts a little bit, given what they've just gone through. But enough time has passed. I mean, we're talking about 100 years after, potentially around the end of Phase 3. They've gone through some pretty big, significant changes, and they've had their butts handed to them a few times already, right? And so some of that hubris may exist. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see if we see the hubris now, because they've been very, they've been humbled during Phase 3 and during the High Republic so far. They've been very humbled. We'll see if that somehow has gone back up, right? If that meter has swung to, we see that hubris start to reappear, the confidence, the arrogance.
Jedi hubris is very resilient, it seems. So.
Right, yeah. And rightfully so. I mean, they are, again, they don't have Sith. They are the guardians of the galaxy, for lack of a better term. They are looked upon as superheroes by certain people. They have abilities that no other people have, right? So it's easy for
all the things you're saying are going to go right into Khmer in his quotes too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're just like setting him up. You're setting the table for him right here.
Yeah. Pieces a lie kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, so they don't. There's not really at least the way I'm kind of envisioning this. And now this is speculation at this point, but is that there really isn't a threat. Like they've done enough to deal with the threats that they've been dealing with for the better part of 200-300 years, and they feel like, okay, we've made it past that. That was a really rough spot. From here on out, it's smooth sailing, man. Like it's just going to be 200-500 years of High Republic reign, or the Senate and Republic reign, and that's of course not going to be the case. So
along these lines, which Jedi are that we're used to, that we know of, which Jedi still live in this era up to the Acolyte? I know it's only a handful that we've kind of got confirmed, but which ones do we have?
Yeah, so we've got a few, and then this is a question. Let me pop it up. I got it. Yeah, there was a question. This is from somebody that actually asked this very specific. I think it was Rebel Scum Apparel. It says, where is Yoda during this time, and who else would be around during this time period? Great question. And so I'm gonna take this from the perspective of the OT and prequel trilogy, and then I've got a question. JW didn't really ask this, not per se, but I'm going to take it the other direction and say, okay, who from the High Republic potentially could make it over into this series? So working from the more, I guess, from the future back, if you will, at this time, we've got Yoda officially confirmed, at least confirmed to be around, not necessarily in the series. Okay.
Right.
That's a whole nother conversation that we'll get into, but Yoda, you've got Yaddle, who we all know. You've got Yaro Poof, who is on the Jedi Council. We see him in the prequel trilogy. You've got, what's his name? So I said Yaro Poof. Oh, Oppo Rancisis as well.
Right.
He's there. Apart from that, I'm trying to think if there's anybody. There could be potentially other people that would be around, like a Maz Kanata.
Right.
Let me throw her out there, because we know that she is around. She's been confirmed. We've already seen her in the High Republic, but she's not necessarily the Jedi Council, but she would be another carryover. You have characters like Hu Yang, who could potentially be around. You've got some droid characters in there that could be around at this time as well. But I mean, you're talking about 5 potential characters right now, maybe 6 at best.
Yeah, I know some people have questions about Plo Koon, because in Keldor years, he's like 380 or 400 years old or something, but things spin differently on Keldor apparently, and really that's only about 60 or so human years, so it does not appear that any of that extends near this far back. So he is about the same age as an older Jedi in the prequel trilogy, even though from his home planet age, he's quite old. So there's been some confusion around some of that. I've read, and other people have asked me about him. So just to clarify that as well. Dex, actually Dex is out there. Rook is not out there. Alex, stop it.
Dex is a good one. I mean, he's kind of like, I mean, I know your mileage may vary in terms of like where you see him as a character, but I mean, he's beloved. But yeah, he potentially could be around. I don't think we're going to see him in the series, but that would be kind of cool. Yeah, Alex, knock it off. Rook's not around here. He's not around. But that's, again, once you get into the really tertiary ancillary characters, I mean, who knows? I haven't gone through that list, but I was
Right.
trying to focus on just kind of the bigger milestone characters, definitely people from the Jedi Council or the characters that we've seen already in the movies. Now, working this back the other way, Chewbacca. Okay, I'll throw Chewbacca in there as well. But working it back the other way now from the High Republic, that's a little bit more interesting because, we've already established that Venestra Rowe is around. So for anybody, and this is one of the questions, is who is Venestra Rowe? So let's just answer that now. So she became kind of a Jedi Knight around the age of 15, if I'm not mistaken, very early on. And her master was a very prominent Jedi during the High Republic era. He's the one that made the cross-hilt lightsaber. For anybody that doesn't know, that Stellan Geos, that lightsaber that you've seen from the High Republic, that's a cross-hilt, that was his, right? He died. Sorry, spoiler alert. But she was she became one of the youngest Jedi to ever make it as a Jedi Knight during the High Republic. And she's had a very prominent role throughout all of the phases, both phase 1 and phase 3 now. Phase 2 is a flashback, but we'll talk about that another time. But she's a very well-loved character. And honestly, when this was announced, to the cheering that happened from people that were Venestra Rowe fans, when we found out that she was in this, I mean, I love it. I don't know how that came to be, the origin of that, whether that was, hey, we need a character to carry over. Who do you think would make it? And someone said, Justina Ireland said, oh, take my character. I created her named Venestra Rowe. And they said, okay, we'll slot her in here, kind of thing. Or how that all came to be. I'm just glad it happened. I love the fact that she's in here. She is the character that we see using the light whip. So she has a purple lightsaber that is a light whip as well, which we can talk about more here in just a bit. But I will say this. Leslie Headland has said, and Rebecca Hauser? Henderson. Rebecca Henderson has said that her character is going to be very different than what we see during the High Republic. And if you think about it, 116 years later.
100 years older, yeah, she's seen some stuff.
She's seen some stuff, right? And she's already been through all those tragedies that we were just talking about that have been playing out in the High Republic literature stuff.
Right.
So, yeah, a lot of it, she's going to have a very different approach. She may be very changed. There's a part of me, when I see some of the stuff in there, she seems very serious, I guess, a lot more so than we see in the books. I just wonder if she's been through enough that she's no longer associated necessarily with the Jedi Order. Like I just have questions around that. Again, it's not nothing confirmed, but there's a sinking suspicion for me that she does feel like she's not necessarily part of the Order, or maybe she's not part of the Council. I would expect at this point,
right.
But she's not maybe necessarily part of the Order too, and that's not uncommon. Again, this is a different type of era for Star Wars and for the Jedi, and there are people called Wayseekers and some other sects of Jedi that have kind of gone out and said, they're following the living Force, very similar to what we talked about recently with Qui-Gon Jinn. They're kind of following the will of the Force, and so they may be still working with the Jedi, but they're not necessarily part of the Order itself. So I guess any thoughts around that, any speculation? Where would you like to see her? Do you want to see her part of the Council? Do you want her to see her part of the Order? Do you think she's more kind of like a consultant that's come in? Given, she's got a lot of expertise and experience?
Actually, this is something I hadn't considered about, was the Council. If you're 116 years old and someone who was a prodigy, studied under Stellan Geos, has the pedigree, and presumably the rest of her life has been quite successful with accolades and whatever she's accomplished, you would almost expect someone like that to be on the Council, right? I mean, with someone, again, who's just had it all laid, it very much like the Stellan Geos life. Everything's kind of, you just fit the mold, right? And you would expect them to be there. But but I'm with you. I don't think that she maybe is. And I still think she's with the Jedi, though. I think that we see her in the temple. Why else should she be there? She's still dressing the part. So I think she's still in it. But you're right. She does feel, there does feel like there's something distant with all of that. And it's really hard to pinpoint what exactly it is, because she does seem very somber and very serious, even for a Jedi. Because even with Lee Jong-jae's portrayal of Master Soul, we still see him with emotion, maybe Carrie-Ann Moss a little less so, but, with Master Soul, we definitely do see a smile and genuine, kind of heartfelt and ways to relate to the child, right? And things like that. But with Vernestra, it just seems like it's all business all the time. And that light whip is definitely all business. So I think she's with the Jedi. Probably not with the Council. I would love if she was with the Council, though. But I don't quite know that I can really pinpoint what the dynamic is with the Jedi. But she definitely seems like she's she's got her eyes on this situation for some reason, and she's probably the one who's taking it the most seriously because this doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
And I like the idea, where I like the idea of like Wayseeker, just to touch on that for a second, is that they do seem to be more in tune with like the living force and seeking and finding things and being in tune with what's going on around them, so that she would identify or sense something does feel special, and I think makes that character more unique. I'm more curious if the character gets out of the series. So that's kind of my biggest question on that one, just to see if she survives.
Yeah. We'll
I
get
hope
to
so. That would be really messed up if she didn't, but
well, we have Death Watch in here a little
Yeah.
bit later about who dies, so we'll get to that here. There's something in the High Republic, not to spend too much more time on this, but in the High Republic, we get I think it was Charles Soule who coined the phrase "every Jedi walks their own path."
right.
Right. And there's some stories around that, meaning you don't necessarily have to be part of the council. You don't have to follow exactly what the council tells you to do every time. Every Jedi should, again, talking about maybe the ideals, the dogma that you should be following the will of the Force, whatever that tells you to be. That may be at odds with what the Jedi Council wants you to do. So I can see where she's maybe just leaned into that more, right? I'm just walking my own path kind of thing, similar to other Jedi that came before me, my friends who were no longer around kind of thing.
She does kind of feel like in the mold of a Qui-Gon in some ways, doesn't she?
Yeah. Yeah. I think the other thing that with her character that we have to keep in mind is we've only seen her in the TV spots. We've only seen her like maybe 3-4 times when we've seen variations of that scene. But we have to keep in mind too that there's one scene in there where she's narrating. You don't see her face, but she's talking about the shifting of balance. Right. And so like you kind of brought this up, but maybe just to hit a little bit harder. Maybe we don't see her in this typical sense that we've seen her in the High Republic books because, you know, she's well aware of what happened last time. There felt like a shift in the balance, right? And she's like that conscious voice that's out there saying, look, we have to take this seriously. You cannot lay down. We can't, we can't be caught flat-footed. It could be just that we were only seeing her in these scenes where she's very, determined and very somber about it because of all the past stuff that's happened.
Yeah, and right on cue, Rollins had a really great comment here. She already experienced Jedi being killed. She ain't gonna let it happen again.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
I mean, yeah, she's very in tune with it. And again, if something doesn't feel right, something's probably not right. It's worth your time to go explore it, right?
Mhm.
And the Jedi haven't always adhered to that kind of methodology sometimes.
Yep. Let's see. As far as the other Jedi, I started making a list here, and I'm trying to pull it up now. So the other Jedi that could potentially be around from the High Republic area, I saw Buryaga is another Wookiee. There's actually
Right.
2 Wookiees that potentially could be around. So there's Buryaga. Man, I don't even know where to start with him, and we can't because we're not going to have enough time to get through all these characters. But Buryaga is just another character that is just so well loved. I mean, he's just amazing in every way. But he's because of his race could potentially be around. Then there's some Wookiee named Arkoff who appeared in the Edge of Balance mangas that came out. Again, still around at least at the end of phase 2 and phase 1, and certainly in phase 3. So potentially that character could be around as well. And then we mentioned the other 2 that have been throughout all of this, which are Hu Yang and Maz Kanata as well. But I couldn't honestly think of other characters. Again, because of that time gap of 100 years ish, that kind of weeds out a lot of people outside of the ones we've already talked about. I'm trying to think if there. Now, let me say this too. In another recent interview, so much has come out from Leslie Headland here in the last 2 weeks, but in a more recent interview, she was talking about, someone had asked her the question of like, hey, are we going to see High Republic characters in the Acolyte? And she said, I want to kind of get this out there now and say, no, not in season 1. It sounds like season 2 might be where that starts to kind of open up. So you might actually get to see your Yodas, which I think is going to be largely absent in this season. I don't expect to see Yoda at all, period. Right. But I don't expect to see Oppo Rancisis. I don't expect to see Yaro Poof. I think a lot of this feels like it's going to kind of be happening on the back, the down low, and it's only at the very end when suddenly Yoda is going to come in and be like, "What the heck's going on down here?" So I would expect a lot of those characters are not going to be around. It's going to be heavy on a lot of new characters. And by the time we get to season 2, I think that's when we start getting in the cameos and the celebrity appearances for some of these other folks, because, I would hope at the end of the series, we've established that the Sith, and I'm using air quotes because we're going to debate this and talk about it a little bit, are back. And so what does that mean now for the rest of the galaxy and the integrity and safety of the galaxy? But I guess your thoughts on any of that as far as who's around and who we're going to see in the season.
Yeah, we have to remember, phase 3 is still very much going on right now. So we're not going to necessarily spoil anything that's coming in phase 3 with the TV series, and I like that it's its own animal, right? It's going to be its own era, its own generation. It is a different generation of Jedi, so of course there's going to be turnover, lives expire, things just happen, right? And so I think this is okay, and I think it gives what it does, and this is something that we've always touted as important, is it gives you a lot of autonomy, gives you a lot of freedom to tell a story without being beholden to all the things. You use Kelnaka instead of Buryaga because A, Buryaga's story is still being told, and then B, people are very attached to Buryaga. And do you want to inherit all of that stuff if you want to take a character in a different way? But can you borrow themes from the High Republic that we've seen? And the answer is definitely yes. We're definitely going to get that. We're speculating Kelnaka specifically is maybe pulling directly from some of that, and even from some of the comic books. So it's really cool that we can pull those themes, and you still have that connected tissue. Everything feels it still feels like the same era, but it's a different generation. So it's still all there, but you don't necessarily have to have all the same characters on screen, and it gives her a lot of flexibility to help the story breathe and not feel beholden to something that happened 100 years prior. Because this is where we got into a lot of this trouble with both the prequel and the sequel trilogy, and I think this is a good lesson learned to, all right, can we set it in a time frame where those things don't really impact us a whole lot, and the things that do, we have ways of working around them, or they're not as relevant or directly relevant to what the story we want to tell this time. So I think those are really great things.
One up says Deva Lonpop is around for sure. She was one of the Marauders, and I think she was in some of the comics. I forget her race, but good call on that one.
Yeah, make no mistake. There are a lot of characters still alive from the books.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of which ones are going to creep into this series. Probably not very many.
And I think similar. I mean, I wouldn't say necessarily Light of the Jedi, but you kind of want to establish. You want to get the core characters out of the way before you bring in other people, because there's already a lot of names to contend with, right?
Right.
So just from a narrative perspective, I can see where they wouldn't go that far or start bringing a lot of folks. Zora Allen says Yoda's yet on another sabbatical because the Jedi is on the brink of trouble. Oh my gosh, don't even get me started. That dude takes the worst time to take vacation.
Yep.
Star Wars Stuff Podcast would love to see Hu Yang kind of take that mantle that R2 had in being the droid that we see in all the TV series. Oh, I like that. Yeah. I like that idea a lot. One up says Yoda might be helping that fish people planet. Who knows what that guy's doing? he just walks away, and then bad stuff happens, and he comes back.
He's playing his little harmonica instrument or whatever it was that he got in the comic books.
Oh, yeah, that's right about that. Who knew he was musically inclined? Okay, so I think let's move on here. Let's get into one of the more debatable, beefy questions. Does May have a twin sister? All right, so officially, yes, she does. Now, this was it's weird the way this came out. We were talking about this just recently on Waystation.
Strange, yeah.
But they released the poster. You can kind of see it in the background there, where you've got two versions of the May character, one looking left, one looking right. And when that came out, everybody was questioning it, ourselves included. Like, what the heck? Why are there two versions of this? And they've not, even to this day, like, I don't know that Disney has come out and said the synopsis is twin sisters are separated or whatever it is. We just know that is the case because there's been interviews. There was an interview where I forget who was interviewing Amandla, but they had asked her, like, someone complimented her and said, had I not known that you didn't have a twin sister, I would have thought you did, given how incredible acting you did with both of the characters, kind of thing.
It was Manny Jacinto. They were asking the characters, like, their experiences with the show, and so they were just talking with various. And I think Amandla and I believe it was Manny were in the same one. And he looked at her and said, "I was like, what impressed you, I think, by your performances, or something that you didn't get to do that somebody else did?" And he looked at Amandla and was like, to play two different characters and to be twins. I mean, they just called it right out there. It was so strange because usually the actors get really scared and nervous about what they can say and what's allowed. So clearly this is the thing. We've seen in the trailers, there's different kids running, or at least one's older. So it seems like there's something unique there. The posters, there were other signs of it, but for them to come out just overtly and just blurt it out, I mean, it was like, okay, well, I guess that's a thing. How do you feel about that? Do you wish that would have... Do you feel like if this is a thing, and this is probably a thing, do you wish that would have been more reveal, or is this just going to happen so soon in the series that it's not going to feel like a big deal at all?
Well, I don't know. I guess it depends on when it's revealed. Like I can see why they were trying to keep this secret, because that's kind of a huge reveal. Like we haven't had identical twins in some time in Star Wars, right?
And twins with force abilities is kind of special to us.
It's kind of special to us, right? So I can see where they would want to keep this under wraps. How you botch, or let me give them the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
I think they released that poster intentionally. Like I think it was meant to spark up debate and conversation. And I love the discourse. Like that's all we were talking about. We were completely consumed now by this idea that, we thought we knew what we knew. And suddenly now they're turning, subverting expectations in some ways. So I think that was intentional. What was not intentional was where it broke. And where it broke was during the trailer. And one of the trailers where Osha says, I didn't do it or something, right? She has
the subtitles came
the subtitles. She has her fugitive moment. And down on the subtitles on YouTube, it said Osha said that character. And everybody was like, wait a minute, who the heck is Osha? Why does that not say May that said that? At that point, the horse had already left the race. Toothpaste was out of the bottle, whatever colloquialism you want to use at this point. But it was too late. I mean, they had to kind of, and they've not, I don't know why, I guess what's still mind boggling to me, and what I still question is why they've not gone and just kind of cleared this up. And I think maybe it's possibly because some people are still not talking about this, or they still want it to still be a surprise. I would say this. I think even if it happened in the first 2 episodes, or it happens in episode 4, when we get the big reveal that there are twin sisters, had we not known about it, I think it would have been a big deal. Like it would have been a huge moment to kind of experience that. And I kind of feel like, I really wish it wouldn't have gotten spoiled. Does it really change anything? No, because I think the ultimate question is, who the hell is the Acolyte? And I think the bigger question that I have in here that we're going to talk about that I don't think anybody's talking about is, why are the Sith, why have they decided now is the time to make their presence known? And maybe they didn't. We'll get to that here in a little bit, but I think that's the question I want to get to.
I think I know the answer to that one too. So,
all right, well, we'll talk about it, but yeah, I don't necessarily think it spoils anything. It is, and it's interesting twist, and it certainly plays now into Frozen, which was technically about 2 sisters, one good, one bad, and although not identical twins, if they follow that storyline, you had the good sister trying to bring the bad sister back to the light, if you will, right? Kind of help her deal with the powers that suddenly she had. Maybe that's the dark side, or you could play this a lot of different ways, and you could really lean into it and play into the whole Frozen storyline. But yeah, I don't know. I guess your thoughts on the twin sister thing. Do you like it? Does it change anything for you in terms of expectations, or spoil anything for you knowing that?
Yeah, I think this spoils a little bit for me. I think I may have used the word botch in a text message to you of like, how could this seems like a pretty big deal. Like, I just don't even understand why they would even have that part of the trailer with the fugitive moment. It just seems like it wasn't necessary. The things they were building up outside of all of that would have been a really great surprise. And so I have a feeling this is all going to be revealed pretty early on. I'm guessing like episode 1 or 2, this is all going to come out. The Jedi are going to start to feel it, or at least as an audience, we're going to start to see what's going on here. Because as soon as we see it on camera, I didn't do it. She just looks like a different character. Not only how she's dressed, but her hair's a little bit. I think her hair's a little bit different too. Clearly, she's talking. The other character doesn't barely say anything, if she's actually said anything. So I mean, they do feel like 2 different people already. I would have just not preferred to see that character, and then we kind of learned that along the way. And I don't think that's being duplicitous about it either. About what they show you and what they show you in a trailer, and then what they show you in reality. I think it's just selective. What they're showing you in that space. But so a little disappointing in that one. Kind of how it came out was the stumbling block, like you said, the subtitle, and then the interview to basically confirm it very casually.
Yeah.
I think it just feels weird. But I think at the end of the day, does it work on screen, right? You can be spoiled, and if it's still good, it's still going to be good. Right. So we'll stay positive there, and we'll see how it plays out on screen and see if it feels, but this would have been a nice surprise, I think, or at least this would have been a fun one to validate people's perspectives. I don't have a problem with the poster whatsoever, though, at all. I think that was fine and that was fun.
Yeah.
The rest of the stuff has just kind of been a bit, it just kind of took the fun out of it.
Unfortunate, yeah, if you will. Just going through here, throwing up some of the comments in the chat about Palpatine.
Obviously, Subdued wins the day. Talking about Dale was asking about Palpatine, and Subdued says he did it legally. He made it legal.
Made it legal.
That is absolutely perfect.
And Steph, pulling at my heartstrings, says I stopped paying attention for a minute and then came back thinking they were talking about the lack of handrails again because they were talking about OSHA. And that's only funny if you're in the U.S.
Yeah, you corporate people and your safety and everything else.
Yeah. It's true. There is no OSHA in Star Wars. We've already established that. At least not in the Empire. Anyways. Okay. Let's see. Where are we at? All right. Here's another big question.
Yeah. This is kind
Who
of a big one.
is the Acolyte? Who is the Master? Jonesy?
Well, all right. So I'm going to go back to what I just told you I knew the answer to, right?
All right.
So there's an interview out there with Leslie, or it's a conversation with Leslie Headland and Dave Filoni. Go watch it, because they actually kind of answer this question to an extent. Not the person, but the situation. It does not sound like we're going to get the Master, right? It sounds like we are going to get the apprentice. So what Leslie Headland was saying is that the apprentice, this is the story of what always intrigued her, was that the apprentice is always trying to usurp the master, and they're always on the look for the next apprentice, right? They're going to be the master. They need the next apprentice. That's what it sounds like this story is going to be telling. So this may not be the Sith master. This might be the apprentice looking for that next generation to work with them to supplant the master, right? So I think, just to, again, take some of the fun out of it, but I think that we may not see the master. Although what I would like to see is that the master does come in at the very end. Does that mean the helmet laying down on the ground is the severed head and something's been taken from that? I don't know. I think that would be kind of cool, but it's a little bit different here about who is the acolyte and who's the master. I think it's going to be who is the apprentice and who is the acolyte that the apprentice is trying to recruit. But what do you feel about that? Did you see that interview, or has this come across your speculation feed?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yeah, I saw the interview. It just came out yesterday, I think.
Yeah, this is pretty new. Yeah.
I have seen it. And I don't know, it confirmed a lot of things for me, I think, because, again, we've been talking about this for a while, and I've got a couple loose screws up there, especially around some headcanon, some
Just
theories.
A few?
Just a few rattling around. But this kind of plays into one of those theories that we threw out a long, long time ago, back when we first covered this thing. We were talking about what would the Acolyte look like. We talked about it being, we would, in our maybe not perfect world, but one of the scenarios would be potentially that the series is around, multiple people that are being, groomed or sought after as the potential Acolyte. We've talked about Count Dooku and what he was doing, right? He was the apprentice, but Darth Maul was out there. And of course he had Asajj Ventress out there, and, the list goes on. And so even this was established back in Legends, right? You had Tenebrous, who had Venomous out there, but then he also had, or Plagueis, or Tennis, I'm getting them all mixed up now, but you had Venomous running around at the same time that Sidious was running around.
Right.
And so this idea that they're all trying to one up each other, and they're trying to, find the next generation kind of thing. And they need that person in order to usurp the master. I love that concept. And I love the fact that even if we didn't know who the master is, I'm actually okay with that, because I love the title. I love the fact that we're focused more on the Acolyte and the dynamics around that, the backstabbing and the cutthroating that's going on around all that. That's the more intriguing part to me.
Right.
And I think there's an opportunity there to really learn about the Sith without necessarily giving away all the secrets. Like I want all the secrets, and I want to know canonically how this all works, but give me that in season 2 and season 3. I love the fact that this season maybe just focused on that, what it means to be an Acolyte, and going around and trying to court these different people and having multiple ones out there at the same time running in concurrency like that. I think that would be a great kind of premise. So, yeah, I guess all that to say is who the Acolyte is. I'm going to leave that for my Razor Crest prediction. So I won't answer that now. I'll get to that a little bit later. As far as the master goes, okay, you and I have talked about who the masters potentially could be around this time. If we go to Legends, then you're talking about Plagueis. You're talking about maybe somebody like Venomous. You're talking about Tenebrous himself. You got you've got those three primarily right now, right? That are in the time frame. When I posted something, when they released another shot of that helmet when it was on the ground, it does look bulbous.
It does, yeah.
And again, it could just be the design. I mean, that design is not atypical. It's not something we haven't seen already with like the Knights of Ren and some of the stuff that we've seen in comics already. So I don't want to read too much into it, but it does look round. And if it's round, then that plays into the Bith kind of, physicality, right? The little bulbous round heads that they have. And so that kind of narrows it down to maybe like Venomous, or I guess more in line with the timeline would be somebody like Tenebrous himself. So I like the idea. I'd love for them to do a reveal at the very end, and that's really all we get. Like in the last episode, we find out it's Tenebrous, and that's great because now we know that there's Plagueis to come and there's Venomous to come, and then eventually, you know, we'll get to the Sidious line that we were talking about. That maybe that's, you know, season 5 or some new series down the road. But I think that'd be great, and we already know too. And I'll kind of turn it over to you to kind of talk about this as well. Sorry, but you mentioned at the very beginning and top of the show, Leslie has done her homework. Like she's quoting stuff from Legends that we've never seen other writers and that people have done. Right, so she's done her homework. She's done her the research. And she's already talked about how there's some things that she wanted to pull from Legends and put in there, and nobody said anything, and so she just ran with it. And so maybe it is. Maybe this is her that was a subtle way of saying that. Look, I snuck in Tenebris, and this is. I wouldn't say it's I'm trying to think. Like so many times we get wrapped around the axle around whether or not Legends names and Legend characters are going to make it into Star Wars officially from canon, and like 9 out of 10 times it never happens. Right? It just never does. But maybe this is the 10th time. Maybe we are finally going to get some little, kind of callback like that, and it's going to send the fan base crazy and wild. What do you think?
I'm hopeful. I mean, what this feels like, this kind of, I think I mentioned this last week, is it kind of feels like Shadowhunter, which was the Darth Maul novel from many years ago from Michael Reeves, and where it feels like you have an apprentice out there trying to make a name for themselves, and you're wondering if they're going to screw up, but they've gone a little bit rogue on you. And so, and I like that disconnect here of the apprentice is working under their own agenda, not under the direction of the master. So the master is still a bit shielded from some things, but the apprentice is making these waves and making a little bit of noise that are probably going to displease the master. And I like that dynamic of let the master be off screen, let this focus on the apprentice, and them recruiting to your, like we were saying, we have these candidates now, right? And who are these candidates? I love the idea of Venomous, and I know Venomous doesn't work in this time frame, but I love the idea of Venomous of a pretender to the throne, right? As someone who believes they have a lot more credibility and deserving and birthright, if you will, to the throne of the Sith as the true Sith Lord, but as a pretender and is not the real deal, right? So I love that dynamic. That is Legends. It is not, I don't believe that's canon at all, right? Because I think technically those books are Legends.
Legends, yeah.
Yeah, but I like the idea. And again, to your point, we have to let go of some of the idea that some of the names might not be the same. This is a tough era because you're only about 100 years. How many Sith Masters and Apprentices are we going to burn through if they're working in the shadows, right? That doesn't seem like we would really churn through a lot of them, but churning through Apprentices and Acolytes, a lot more feasibility there rather than the master themselves. So the master could remain true as a Tenebris. I think Tenebris makes the most sense as a master in this era, but I think from an apprentice, this could be, or from the apprentice, I think this could be like Kamir is acting sketchy, right? He's quoting Sith lines. I mean, he's got to be a candidate in there too. May seems to be the acolyte here. We see her using the Force to pull up a lightsaber, a red lightsaber at that. So, it's clear that she is probably the acolyte. If May is the evil part of the character, the evil twin, it sounds like she is. And maybe that's, that is the acolyte. That might just be very clear, but who is the apprentice that's recruiting the acolyte is the one that's kind of most intriguing. And right now, of the characters we've been introduced to, if it's one of them, Kamir seems to be the obvious choice, but maybe that's a bit of a misdirect there. But how does the smuggler fit into this story otherwise at this point? And that's kind of an interesting one to try to figure out.
Yeah. Kamir is interesting. I don't know where he lands. Like, he definitely feels like he's part of it. I'm not ready to get on board with him being like an acolyte or being the master, although, I wouldn't be against it.
Master, no, maybe apprentice. Though.
Maybe apprentice.
That's why I want to take the master out of it. Like, I think we probably have to decouple them, because I just don't think if we see the master, and I think you were maybe going this direction, if we see the master, I would love to see the master at the end and they're not happy. And maybe they lop the head off of the apprentice and they scoop up one of, an acolyte or somebody else steps in to take that moniker. They've already started replacing them because they're acting rogue. I like that idea because it's very aligned with our Sith ideology of how they operate, how they work. When you betray them, hey, we're really proud of you, but here's the consequences. Defend yourself. Are you going to be able to do it? If not, okay, cool. Next person up, or next being up, I guess, technically. So I like that. And also I want to shield the master, because I think that's important for us to continue to remain a mystery in this era, so that the Jedi's lack of clarity around the Sith can remain intact. And so I think some of that is important to remain pure to an extent. and it not be just another the Jedi sweeping everything under the rug, because I think that might have a little bit of a rub. But I would love it if the master was insulated, so they really don't know and they really don't have an idea about what they did. It could just be someone rogue.
Yeah. Dale, stand by. We're going to come to your question here. I just saw it in the chat. We'll get to that in here in a second. Jorge Castro says, can't wait to see more live action Jedi Vectors. Again, that was something just this week. We got the little clip and we get to see the Jedi Vector. We'd speculated whether or not we would see them. I think we both were hoping and figured that we would, but now it's officially confirmed we're going to see it. And for anybody that doesn't know, the Jedi Vector is the precursor to the Jedi ships that we would see in the prequel trilogy. They connect to them with the Force, and they're really cool looking, great design. They've been
power them with their lightsabers.
Power them with the lightsaber. That's going to be the cool thing when they take that lightsaber and put it in that socket like the key and turn it on or whatever it is. I can't remember how they start that up. Man, I hope they show that, because that's something special right there.
I would actually love to see if it's evolved after that, but they make a reference to it. I think would be fun.
Oh yeah, right. Now it's just a key. How lame would that be if that was the case?
Do I want to see it though? Abso-freaking-lutely.
Yeah. After watching the interviews with Headland, chances seem higher we get a Plagueis in Tenebrous connection. That's green there as well. Okay. All right. Here's what I said earlier, the $1 million question. I'm going to go to you because you said you have an idea here. But it's, why have the Sith chosen now to come out of hiding? Or have they?
Well, and that's the thing. And I won't regurgitate it all, but I think I think this is almost like a rogue apprentice that the Sith master has not made the decision to come out of hiding.
Okay.
And I think this is the apprentice out there trying to maybe dissatisfied with whatever's going on. The Jedi are still strong. We're not making progress fast enough. Our working in the shadows and working in secret doesn't work for me anymore because we are ready. What are we waiting for? And so they try to go out there and start recruiting, because the time is quickly coming to where the master will be, the master will no longer be the master and the apprentice will be the master. So I think that's what it is. And again, master shielded, don't ever see them. Apprentice is the main focal point here, and not a real decision of the Sith to come out of hiding, but they are going to be found because of their own arrogance and their own impatience, I think.
Yeah. So your answer is predicated on it being a true Sith Lord. The other explanation, or one of the other explanations, is that they're not. And this is what Dale was talking about here. He says, I'm not even sure it's an apprentice. I don't think these are Sith Lords we're looking for. The show may lead to the Sith, but this could be just the influence of an ancient relic, a mask, etc. We've seen a lot of that recently in Star Wars. Momin's mask. We've seen, the dagger from Shadow of the Sith. But we know that there are ancient relics out there, Sith relics, that have the power to influence people and make them do their bidding, if you will. So I think that's another viable explanation, because it's already been established. These could not be Sith. They could just be people being influenced, and suddenly they're finding holocrons. And these Sith holocrons, right? If they lean into Legends, if you find a Sith holocron, you can learn the ways of the Sith. They have knowledge, how to use a lightsaber, how to channel the dark side. That's how they trained their apprentices for many years, right? So it wouldn't be weird for somebody to come across a relic or a holocron, suddenly go, man, I'm starting to learn all this stuff. I'm going to pretend I'm going to be a Sith. And by the time we get to the end of the season, right, at the end of the series, by the time we get to season 3, and the Jedi are looking at this through a lens of, we really don't want to cause any alarm here. We're going to pretend that we won't even classify them as true Sith Lords. It
was ambiguous enough that they couldn't make the connection, I guess.
Yeah, right.
They didn't try real hard.
They didn't try very hard. So they're imposters, right? They're wannabes, and so therefore that bodes well for Ki-Adi Mundi saying the Sith have been extinct for a millennia, kind of thing, right? He's not wrong. He's not in the know. It's just how they define it. It's their point of view in terms of what they classify as Sith Lord. And again, if these are people that are just following holocrons or being influenced by relics, I can see them playing word games and making their own definitions up.
I get hung up on the lightsaber, though. I really get hung up on the lightsaber. That I don't know that we're not really willy-nilly throwing red lightsabers around in Star Wars, of saying that I found it or I took it off of a Sith body, or I learned it. Like those.
Maybe I killed a Sith Lord. Sorry, that was quite
well, you can't kill a Sith Lord. But I mean, I get hung up on the lightsaber, though. And I know that's probably a little bit rudimentary, and maybe some people are disappointed that it's something so basic, but there's something special about a red lightsaber crystal, what it takes to do it.
The process of bleeding is what you're talking about.
Yeah, the bleeding process and what you pour into it as a dark side practitioner, not necessarily Sith, of course, but synonymous with Sith, practices. And I get a little bit fixated on that one because I want that to still mean something and be associated with the Sith and be unique and special to them. And I know Asajj Ventress has red lightsabers. They were gifted. She didn't do them herself. It's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
But I still want that to have some sort of meaning. And I think in this era where we're unsure about what the Sith are up to and what they're doing, I think certain pieces of tradition like that, I believe are very important to maintain and to keep that tradition and keep it clear, especially for an audience that's not going to be familiar with this timeline and this frame of reference with it. And so I think I am taking this one a little bit more literally than perhaps I would normally be open to considering and maybe evaluating other things. But I really want this to kind of be pure in this way.
Yeah. Well, so the reason I put this question in here was because it's a very risky move given the current state of where the High Republic is at. I think it's very risky for them to expose themselves in this way.
Why would you come out?
Why would you do exactly? That's my point. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah.
Now, this could be just a failed attempt, and this is something that the Masters obviously survived because at some point we got to get Sidious, right? And this might be a reason for Palpatine to go back and look at history and go, okay, I'm not doing what they tried to do 100 years ago. Like that failed. Yeah. They weren't ready. I clearly need to come up with a better plan, and so that's why he plays this extremely long game. And, with everything that happens in the prequel trilogy, right? Maybe that's how they explain it. So it could be as simple as that. But I do find it very, they don't really, there's not at least from what we know so far, there's not a potential for a swing of power. You can't just be a Sith Lord that comes out and says, oh, I'm going to come up during the High Republic, where there's the most Jedi ever, and I'm just going to go kill them all. Like, you're not going to do it. There's just no way, right? That's why they went extinct to begin with.
There's only so many, and you could even say, well, I'm thinning them out. Well, that's a really long slow process.
Yeah.
And I get it. You could probably do that, but this seems to be a string of murders, the way that they've positioned it. So this definitely seems like it's a proving ground of sorts. And so that's why I kind of feel like it is a bit more clear that there is Sith stuff going on here, even if it's not sanctioned Sith stuff.
Yeah. So this kind of leans in, I guess, into two other quick theories, and we'll move on, I promise. But this idea that the Sith are going around murdering people, again, why would you expose yourself in that manner, right? You're leaving a trail of bodies out there. Now, I like your theory. I like the idea that maybe this is really not them. This is somebody else acting as though, and they're being very sloppy, and these bodies are being left around. That probably makes more sense. But if I'm a true Sith Lord and I'm playing this long game and I've been hiding for 1,000 years, I'm not going to go around killing a bunch of Jedi and leaving bodies and leaving a trail. And if I do that, for the benefit of the doubt, if I do that, I think this goes back into some of the original theories that came out when Acolyte was mentioned and we started getting kind of the premise of the show. You're going to go around and try to clean up the bodies. You're not going to leave any witnesses. You can't leave witnesses to what's going on because you're going to get exposed very quickly. If they find out that there's a Sith Lord around, it's like an APB. All Jedi are out there combing the galaxy looking for this person at that point, right? Because they don't want the Sith to rise. They don't want the power or the balance of the Force to be swayed, right? So it's just weird and kind of reckless for them to do that. So either this was something happened by mistake and we're seeing them trying to go through the process of cleaning it up, leave no witnesses, or it's a matter of the other two scenarios. One, they're full of confidence and they're going to take a stab at this, no pun intended. They're going to fail miserably. That becomes a lesson learned for Palpatine later down the road, or they're imposters and they're just, doing this thinking that they're Sith Lords and they really aren't.
Yeah. So I think something else, if we hadn't seen the Sith on screen, some of this stuff may have been at a little bit different perspective too. They have an Acolyte doing this who doesn't have a lightsaber. And we hear Master Soul, why aren't you attacking me with a weapon? And May is using knives. So they have someone who has beef against the Jedi potentially, left the Jedi, got kicked out, got lost, whatever it might have been. So they've kind of turned someone that has that anger against them. Plus she's using traditional weapons or knives or daggers or whatever they are. So there's not lightsaber burns or anything like that. So they are playing it a bit safe in that way while also still thinning the herd. Now, they do present themselves later on, and that's kind of the one that gets us rubbing out. That kind of rubs us the wrong way a little bit of like, okay, what is that? And maybe that's just an unfortunate circumstance, or maybe they really are that powerful, and they appear to be very powerful, that they could actually take out 8 Jedi or however many are there. But I think we have to remember that they are using a proxy within this Acolyte and this May character, if that's who the Acolyte ends up being, in order to accomplish this, that would still protect their anonymity and protect their true intent and purpose of the Sith being out there. And the Jedi are confused about what it did because they don't see the traditional evidence of the Sith. But I think that's where this fight scene in the Force is going to be so telling about how that ends up and where that is in the season. If that's, there's appears to be that that's a middle of the season type of event. Maybe it's this episode 4 and 5. You were talking about 5 seems to be a lot of action. If that's episodes 4 or 5, somewhere right smack dab in the middle of the season, then we get the backside of all of that too, of when they're saying what is the legacy of this person who presented themselves as a Sith something, whether it's master or apprentice or acolyte or however it might fit all together. But
yeah,
that's really curious if that was the intent. And then if they killed the person, then again that kind of feeds into they thought they took care of the problem. But so anyway, the acolyte again, not using a lightsaber and stuff. I think that's intentional, and that does protect them. So they're not necessarily revealing themselves, but they're certainly accomplishing multiple goals at the same time of thinning the herd, especially these really strong masters, and then also testing their potential, apprentice for the future.
So just on that, I said we move on, but now you said something that just made me think, we see when May is fighting both Indara and Master Soul, she's grabbing for their lightsabers. Right. And you could look at that as, she's trying to disarm them. That's, arguably there, but I don't think that's the case.
Right.
It could be that she's trying to find her own lightsaber because she wants to bleed that sucker, right? She wants to become the new acolyte. Yeah, I don't know. What do you agree?
Well, and the interesting about that one is that she walks away from Indara's lightsaber. So
no, that's true. She's kind of walks. Maybe she took the kyber crystal out. Maybe she took the kyber crystal out.
Yeah, that's actually a great point. It's confusing though about like what's the intent, because you're right. We see it very clearly in both of those fight sequences where she is trying to get the weapon. Now, granted, disarming a Jedi and taking that weapon from them is a great idea.
Sure. Right. Makes sense.
And using it against them is a great idea.
Even better idea. Right.
Right. So those make sense. But you're right. But her leaving it was really curious. That one didn't make like you take that as a trophy usually. The Inquisitors did that, right? So you would think that they would take trophies. And again, we know even from the Vader comic, they explored a lot of this too, of saying you take the weapon and then you have to have a connection to bleed that crystal, but you still need the housing. And then later on, you would build your own housing.
Right.
You
kind of transfer the crystal.
Right. But it's a temporary means until you have the time to go bleed it yourself. So,
well, I mean, lightsaber hilts are in abundance right now, right?
That is true. Yeah.
So given how many Jedi are around, but all right, let's keep going because we're going long on time here. Some of the stuff we've already answered. So have the Sith been extinct for millennia? I think we've answered that. I think the answer questions, I would agree. No, it's not.
They weren't extinct for a millennia in the Phantom Menace either, but we tend to overlook that Maul and Sidious were there the entire time. So,
yep. Some of these can be quick fire round questions. Do you think Adara is killed in the first episode?
It kind of feels like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. For all the reasons we've already stated earlier on, establishing her, and then we've got her in the cutscenes, so she's not necessarily going away.
It raises the stakes right away, and I think that's like you said at the top of the show. I think that's important to do right away. That you do feel very threatened, and we don't know these characters, so all of them feel at risk, right? And we know the stakes are going to decline with Kelnaka and some of the stuff that we see with his scene. So a lot of things that don't make sense, and I think it's really important to go ahead and kill a character off right away.
Steph says, "Oh wow, that's crazy." I'm not sure.
She's just saying all of the stuff we're talking about is probably insane.
Oh, so yeah, well, mission accomplished as far as I'm concerned on that one. Why is someone killing the Jedi? Who is doing the killing? I think we've talked about this now enough. I think we've done enough with that one.
Yeah, definitely this May character, it seems like, as an acolyte auditioning or whatever her true purpose is. I think, again, we're also told by Headland and company that don't take everything at face value. And again, that's the Rashomon storytelling. You're going to see different perspectives. What's true, what's reality. Those are going to blend together. It's going to be a little interpretation of it, kind of like we saw in Last Jedi. But I think some of that is going to kind of bend us a little bit and have us question who these characters are, what their motivations are, what do they truly want out of all of this.
Let's see. Will a Sith Lord appear in the series, and if so, who? I think we've beat that one pretty much to death.
We can beat it again if you like.
Where are Darth Plagueis and Darth Tenebrous?
That is a great question because I don't know.
We don't know, and I think based on what we've answered so far here tonight is that I don't know that we're necessarily, at least us, are personally concerned about them. It's great if they're there. I mean, one of them's there, I would assume. If they even use, it doesn't have to be these guys either. I'm a huge Legends fan. I'm a huge KOTOR and SWTOR fan. I would love for these guys to be the Sith Lords of this series, but if they're not, I'm okay with it. All right, that's you're focusing on the wrong things, I think, if that's the case. So, but yeah, it could be anybody really. They could just give me a brand new Sith Lord. I'm absolutely okay with that. Whatever. It doesn't have to be these guys. Why are there Neimoidians in the series? Jonesy?
Why are you asking me?
Well, okay, so here, I don't know. So we only know these guys. Well, we don't now. We know them from all kinds of stuff, from Clone Wars and everything else. But going into the prequel trilogy, they were kind of, right, they were what enabled Palpatine to
they were
set
pawns,
up.
right?
Yeah, they were pawns in the grand scheme of all the chaos that he was brewing and trying to start to get the power. We've seen him in the trailer. I don't even know that we've heard them talk in the trailers. Now I'm trying to remember if we have or have not. I don't think it really matters. They may just be established as a kind of like a wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Hey, they're around and they're being manipulated here and they're going to continue to get manipulated down the road, but they could just be pawns, players, who knows? But it's a good question. I just don't, it's hard to speculate on that, where they fit into the grand scheme of things, when so far everything they've given us in trailers and TV spots has been primarily focused around Sith Lords, Acolytes, right? Jedi dying, and then you got these two bozos popping in. Maybe they're the comic relief. I don't know. Really don't know.
Well, I do like that there is a little bit of a connection to the Phantom Menace, and you have some of that. So maybe it's just it's more of a feeling you get when you see them. But again, I would like to see where they have, and I don't think they dwell on this at all, right? But I think you do see some machinations of the Trade Federation and in Neimoidia. Some of the stuff we saw in Brotherhood, actually, you start to maybe see a flavor of some of that stuff coming into play, even though it's very, very subtle. It's very, very brief. Hardcore fan Easter egg type stuff, nothing really there. But I think it's also to show them back on screen, maybe redeem a little bit of the Phantom Menace and later material for the Neimoidians and how they were portrayed and how maybe some of the animatronics they had on the faces and all of that. So maybe just a way to revisit that in a more modern way.
Do you think they're going to align their lips with the dialogue?
Oh man,
this will be the hardest question you'll answer tonight.
I'm gonna go with no, they won't. Just out of having a little bit of fun with the prequel trilogy, that they would still keep them out of alignment, just because that's canon and that's consistent. Yeah. So I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they're gonna keep that weird inconsistency.
I don't like
it's gonna
that.
drive you up a wall too.
It makes me nuts. Drives me nuts. Will Palpatine show up? No.
He is not alive.
He's not alive. He won't be alive for a while. Why is Kel Naka attacking another Jedi or other Jedi?
This is weird. This is where things get fun. I'm gonna let you. I'll let you speculate on this one first.
Well, I'm gonna tie this to this next question here of why does Torben look possessed? There's something going on, and I don't know that I have a good theory just yet, but there's definitely something going on in the flashback scenes where we're visiting with these witches, which I still feel like are probably going to be some, detached sect of the Path of the Open Hand, Path of the Closed Fist, right? Some lineage of that group. I think that's in my head anyways.
I tend to agree with you, actually.
But yeah. And where was I going with that? Oh, so whatever, I don't know what's going, that could just be a situation that's going on at the time where people are being possessed. It could be a ritual itself, but somehow it does feel like Kel Naka is maybe under that same influence that maybe you see like Torben under, or whatever he's attacking. I don't think he's doing it. I don't think Kel Naka is attacking the Jedi because he hates them. He's got to be under some kind of influence, whether that's, maybe it's, going back to what we were talking about, maybe at some point these witches came across a Sith artifact and it has the power to possess people, and they hid it, put it away, and now May found it, or somebody else found it, and that's why we are where we are today. And in the process of going back and trying to figure out, like, how did this even happen, they go back and revisit the last time they knew something like this occurred. And maybe it was with Kel Naka, maybe it was with Torben, where they did get possessed by the artifact, and we get those kind of flashbacks. And so we see that. But I don't think, I guess the short answer to that is I don't think Kelnaka is actually attacking Jedi because he wants to. He's got to be under the influence of something going on. And maybe what we see with Torben, maybe he's another character that was possessed by it. And what we're seeing in some of those flashback scenes is the ritual in which they're going through and purging that out of him, or somehow detaching him from the Sith relic in some way, right? That could be another potential reason why we see those guys together.
Yeah, and it's brutal too. I mean, Kelnaka pulls his lightsaber out. He's on the ground. In a more recent TV spot, you actually see what it's kind of tough to see what it is because it's so split second. But a furry hand is pressing a face. I thought it was Yord at first, but I think it's actually Torben. He's got cuts on his face, and it looks like a Wookiee hand smashing his head against the wall, and he's screaming.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
again, and I love what I love about this is then we flash forward to the current of the present day of the series, and Kelnaka is a loner. He's on this planet. He's leaving a solitary lifestyle. It feels very Barrage Vow, which of course is established in the Phase 2 of High Republic and the 150 years before the Phase 1 of High Republic. I know that's confusing, but again, something that comes up in the Vader comics as well. So I like that we get that aspect of it too, and that there's some sort of atonement, right? That Kelnaka feels like he was either taken advantage of or he was forced to do this and wasn't strong enough to resist it. There's so many things, but I'm really interested. It's going to be a short story, I think, but we see with the other people in this coven, they have black eyes as well, very similar to what we see happen to Torben before he falls to his knees and succumbs to it. But clearly there's something else at play here that is really wrecking the Jedi with their abilities. And with regard to the coven is a extension of the path of the open hand. If it's not that, I think the other alternative that I just said, they are one of these sects that originally come from Jedha of other Force bodies, like when they did the Convocation of the Force, I believe is what it was called.
That was in the Battle of Jedha book.
Yeah, Battle of Jedha. Phase 2, they would do this group where they would bring all of the Force users together, and they'd have a big Force powwow, basically of convening to the
Force. Like
Force.
a TED Talks of the time. Everybody gets up on stage and
yeah, it was like a UN type of an idea behind it of these different groups to try to get along and whatnot. So that they would originate from Jedha, I think, is also another really cool connection there too. And of course, that could be a path of the open hand as well, although they kind of come from Dalna, but things like that kind of work too. But I'm really interested in this story way more than I thought I would be, because all of a sudden, this is where the TV spots have really ramped up my interest, is seeing Kelnaka be super aggressive. Is he possessed, or is he defending himself and feels like he has to end whatever darkness is in Torben because it's torturing him or whatever it might be. There's a lot of different directions we could go here.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. I do like that idea of him taking the Barrage Vow. For anybody that doesn't know, that's when a Jedi kind of separates, takes a sabbatical, if you will, and goes and tries to just reconnect with the Force because they feel like they've disconnected in some way. Maybe they've done something egregious. They've fallen too close to the dark side. They just need to kind of realign, recommit kind of thing. That's really what that's about. So I like that concept and like that theory. Let's see. Will the Jedi... So this is a question that this came from both Lauren and Fred. Both expressed concerns here about whether or not the Jedi are going to be made out to be bad guys in this series. I guess
it's a fair question. Yeah,
it's fair. There's a lot of Jedi bashing that's already happened. Yoda isn't always in the most favorable light at times, rightfully so. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I guess my thought on this is I think they are going to be portrayed as the good guys. It's hard to know for sure because there are a lot of quotes from Leslie Headland about, the Jedi. I forget. I think I might even have one here that I put aside. I don't have it, but there's a lot of quotes in here, and I'm going to just kind of summarize her saying that as an institution, yes, the Jedi are good people, and they will always be good people. They are the light, but they are people, and because they are people, they're going to have people that fall and have tendencies to make mistakes, and that's where it's easy for us to get caught up around. And are they going to be portrayed as bad people? As an institution, are they bad? And I don't think that's the case. Like, I don't think that's where they're trying to go. I think it's probably fair to say, to Luke's point in The Last Jedi, that there's people out there that feel high and mighty. We see some of those examples in the High Republic right now. So, are they susceptible to making mistakes? Yes. Are they susceptible to succumbing to the dark side? I think so, which goes to one of my Razor Crest theory a little bit later. But yeah, I don't think they're gonna. I don't think they're gonna wholesale or wholesale kind of go and say the Jedi are just really corrupt. They're bad people. They're not in this for the light. They're in it for power and glory and all that stuff. I don't think that's the case. But I think we are going to have individuals that fall from grace, and we're going to have individuals that make bad mistakes, selfish decisions, go against the code, the Jedi code in some way, because that breeds drama. If you don't have that, then what do you have, right? We're just going to have a Sith Lord running around killing people, and yeah, that's fun, but I just don't think that's what Leslie Headland has in mind. I think she's going for the more intriguing storylines of kind of that dynamic and that diversity there.
I think we're going to see both sides. I mean, I think we're going to see the Jedi as good characters. I know that's not always as fancy to see on screen, or maybe as popular to see the Jedi being good, but I think we'll see both. I mean, again, we see it with Kamir already on the other side of it, of being disenfranchised with the Jedi, May, again, attacking Jedi. Clearly there's stuff there. You're going to see perspectives that are going to say the Jedi are corrupt, or their ideals are skewed. Everything they believe in is built on a throne of lies, whatever it might be. But you're also going to see, and again, this is Rashomon, right? So perspectives and not always reality, of then also saying, okay, well, from the Jedi perspective, though, they are trying to do well in the galaxy. To your point, the institution means well. They do a lot of good things. Are they flawed? Do they make mistakes? Do they fall short? Absolutely, but they're always trying to move forward. The Living Force painted this and actually talked about this dilemma quite well, I think, with John Jackson Miller. I highly recommend going to read that for, I think, a little bit of context of what we might see here. I think there might be some correlation there too. Are they connected with the Living Force? Not the book, but the Living Force itself. So I think those types of themes and stuff, will they come out so overtly? Probably not, but I think they will be there and subtle. And I think we'll see both sides of that coin of, yeah, the Jedi really are trying to do well, but then there's other people who have been burned, and maybe they have been burned by the Jedi, or maybe they've just been burned by circumstances that the Jedi were involved in. And often that's what we see in the books. The Jedi come through and do a lot of good, but then they leave because there's only so many to go around. Can they be at an outpost all the time, or do they need to go elsewhere, right? And what are the reasons why they're leaving? And some of those are more important. We'll see how much we get of that in 8 episodes, but I think we'll see both sides of it. So I think the concern is there, and I think it's valid, because I think we will see them as bad guys from that certain point of view, but we're also going to see that they are good and inherently good, and there are going to be some really bright spots within the Jedi too. So I think we'll kind of see both sides of it. So I'm not really worried, because the story is supposed to be really from the Sith perspective anyway. So we should expect to see more of that. But I hope there's a certain balance that says the Jedi are not inherently bad, but the Sith definitely disagree with the ideals of the Jedi, and therefore that's how they'll be painted. You're on mute.
Yeah, and you have characters like Kamir that are saying, peace is a lie, right? He's going to be throwing daggers probably throughout this series at the Jedi, propagating the agenda of the Sith in some way, or maybe just being that the other, the little devil on the shoulder, saying really they're not good, they're just like everybody else, kind of thing. So you're right. We're probably going to see and expect more of that. But at the core, are the Jedi evil or bad guys? No, they're just probably going to make some mistakes, as we all do.
Right, so, but I think Lauren's concern, which I think is totally valid, by the way, is, are we going to tear them down? Are we going to keep tearing them down in a way that just makes them feel like they're worthless? And why did we ever tell a Jedi story in the first place? Yeah. Why do we allow them to be so aligned with the Republic? I'm hopeful it won't go that route, and I don't think that's the intent of the series. So I'm hopeful that won't be the case, where we just continue to tear them down. Someone else's perspective of it, definitely going to get that, though.
All right, what's up with the light whip, purple light whip?
Go for it. Tear us into this one.
I'm going to keep it short, because we're out of time. But I mean, it's
always out of time.
The first thing that comes to mind, the first thing I always say is, well, it was in Legends, and the rebuttal to that is, doesn't mean it's stupid. And my rebuttal to that rebuttal is, if this is the quote stupid thing that you've decided to cancel Star Wars on, man, like, what have you been watching? Because there's so many other things. There's a long list of things that I would call, quote, stupid, that if I really had a problem with, I would have left Star Wars long ago. Now I get it. With the Jedi lightsaber, it is, it's sacred. And, there are people out there that are the purists, and I get it. And that's kind of why they're dying on this hill. But I mean, I don't know. That ship sailed years ago, so I don't know why you're still holding on to it at this point. But
Yeah, and it's the story of the light whip, which I think is actually interesting that people won't have because they didn't read the books. And this in Vernestra was in the young adult books, I believe, right?
yeah,
And even
mid grade ones, yeah.
the mid grade, yeah, yeah. So younger stories, and again, this was something that she kept secret, from a lot of people because it was creative and unique, but also it started to skew. Is that really the purpose of the Jedi? Is that what? Are you stepping outside of your Jedi boundaries and you're creating this thing that is like basically impure? And look at it, and those that saw it saw that as like they don't. I can't remember if they actually called it dark side, but there were concerns about what that might actually be, right? So it was also about her journey, and so I think it's also a part of this character, and is part of the lore that's been built over the last several years now with Vernestra Rose. So understand it's different for people to see on screen. I'm curious to see how well they play this out on screen because it is it looked like a really long light whip. And in the covers of books, you don't really see that it's that long. It seems like it's much shorter, but this one on the trailer, of course, was quite long. So we'll see if she might have refined it though. She could probably fine tune it. Clearly she can change the length of this thing. So she's probably a master whips woman at this point. But I think this is something that if you take a few minutes to go understand the character and the meaning of the lightsaber with the character, this becomes less problematic. And you probably like, okay, I don't have to like it, but I kind of get it. It's not that big of a deal.
I was about to mention what One Up just said. She had a vision that told her to do it right. I've only read Test card 3 times. Yes, something compelled her to go create to use the light whip. And so to Jonesy's point, it's not necessarily something like everybody's running around with these things. They are few and far between. But here, and I'll date myself on this one, and I don't mind.
You usually do.
I usually do. I remember this debate when Splinter of the Mind's Eye came out, because that was the first book that I think, if I remember, well, I do remember, you could Luke adjusts the blade, the length of the blade, and I think he made it longer or slimmer. I can't remember now. It's been a while since I read that book. I mean, literally, it's been almost 40 years. But when that came out, holy bananas, people were pissed off. Like, you can't go tweak the length of a lightsaber blade. Where was that in the original? Where was that in Star Wars, aka in New Hope, right? And that debate went on for years. Like, even after that, like all through the 80s, there were people complaining about, can you adjust lightsaber blades, and what was, how much can you fine tune them and that sort of thing. And so,
and now we're like, yeah, you can do it, no problem.
Do it, yeah, whatever.
Not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it happens all the time. And then we talked about it too. Like, there are now double lightsaber blades. There was Ezra's lightsaber blade. I mean,
training sabers.
And I know people again will throw out that rebuttal of, well, I hated all those too. Okay, cool. So what? Anyway, it's just silly. You get over it. But all right, let's see. Last couple of questions here, and these are from some people in our Patreon group. JW asks, how connected to the High Republic books do you think this show will be? Do you think there'll be more of Easter egg approach, or do you think more foundational to the story?
Yeah, I think definitely Easter egg. And I think Leslie Headlands basically said it, and you said it at the top of the show too. You do not have to know anything about the High Republic to step into this series and know what's going on. And to get acclimated, you don't have to know any of the history. Now, if you do, there's going to be a lot of Easter eggs, and I think but it seems like it's really going to have a lot more Easter eggs of like, Old Republic and Legends material, and some of High Republic thrown in there too. But I don't think we're going to have a lot of. I think it will feel like this era. They won't call it the High Republic, I'm sure, because that would be pretty pretentious. But well, maybe I don't know. I guess it goes how far we're going to go with the last question on the Jedi, I guess. But yeah, I don't think that it's going to be. I don't know. It'll feel connected because I think the era, the ships, the vectors we talked about, some of the things, the dress. So I think the vibes and the way that they behave, their belief systems, I think all of that will feel very connected and a lot of continuity with the books, which I think will be very positive things. But from do you need to know anything about it? Well, clearly you don't. And I think for some people that might feel like it's less connected than it really is. But from what I'm seeing visually, and again, we have pretty limited dialogue, it will feel very, very much a part of it, though. So I think it will feel that continuity, I think, will be there.
Yeah, I'll say what you said probably differently, but it's the same thing. Like, foundationally, we're going to see a lot of it from the High Republic because it has to be there, right? It sets the tone. It is the setting. It's the aesthetic already. We've seen that already with what they're wearing, the garb, maybe even the lightsabers, depending on where they are with the Jedi protocol or the Guardian protocols, and that we won't get into that discussion now. But some of that stuff is kind of foundational because it sets it apart from what we see in the prequel trilogy. So from that perspective, yes, we will see that. I don't know that, at least in season 1, and I think this is where he was coming from, is like, are we going to get references to Nihil or Marchion Ro or Marchion Ro, wherever you lie with that one? Are we going to get those kind of callbacks? And I just don't think we're going to. There's been enough time where that's probably not being discussed. Like, they don't even want to talk about the Nameless anymore. That was a horrible, horrible smudge in the history of the Jedi Order. And so we're past that. We're just looking forward now, that kind of thing. But we still have to have that same setting, that campaign setting, if you will, for Star Wars. That is the High Republic. And so we will get that foundationally, but probably nothing more. The next season 2, I think we may get Easter eggs as far as characters are popping in and appearing, or references and that sort of thing. But it does feel like, again, because she set out to do this originally independent of the High Republic, that of Project Luminous, I think we'll probably see this is probably going to have the most connectedness, if anything, to that. And then from here on out, I kind of really want this not to be tied to the High Republic. I want to see this more of a transitional time into the prequel trilogy and get more focused on, what's continuing to happen with the Republic, what's continuing to happen with the downfall of the Jedi, what's being done in the background around trade federations and the economies and all that crap that Plagueis was trying to do out there, right? And then get into the Sidious part.
You want politics to come
I don't
back
really
to
want the
save.
politics, but it has to be a part of it, I think.
Economic vitality of the Republic.
No. Anyways, I don't need to know the GDP of, Mandalore, which I don't think they have one. But you know what I'm saying? Like, I want it to just kind of, I want that to be the start of a transition period, and that's really moving away from the High Republic. As much as I love the High Republic, there's plenty of other stories they can still tell there and that sort of thing. But I do want to, start separating ourselves from it.
What I would like, and this is probably more in the Easter egg bucket here for J-Dubs, but is maybe Vernestra says, we haven't seen a threat to the Jedi like this in 100 years.
Yeah, like right, exactly.
That would be really,
Like,
it would be like, I know what you're talking about.
Don't build that space station and don't call it Starlight, because last time you did that.
Right, yeah. Don't trust those marauders, or if anybody's carrying pets around, we're gonna need to check that before they get on the plane.
Yeah.
But I would love subtle things like that, because I think those do help feel like it's all it's all part of the same era. But I'm with you. I think we need to feel like it's this bridge. There is a difference between the era that we're leaving in the books, but it's still also, it's moving towards what we know in the movies, but also still not quite there. And it's its own generation too. So I like where we're going. I think aesthetically, like you said, you said it really well. I think those things we're setting the stage really well for that. And I'm liking where we're at. And I think they're going to handle this pretty well. And I think Leslie Headland, I think she has an idea of how she wants to do this to make sure that it feels connected, but it doesn't feel dependent on the books.
Yeah. Here's an easier one. Lucid Truth says, do we think the series will reference the Chosen One prophecy? He wants a series that doesn't lean, or he was kind of, I think, half joking about this. Like, he doesn't want, similar to what we're just talking about right now, where this does kind of need to feel like its own thing. He doesn't want them going and starting to lean into the OT stuff or the Chosen One prophecy. So I think the short answer on this one is no. I don't think we're going to get anything like that.
Yeah, and I think they've been very clear about what the story is going to be, and so I don't think the Chosen One really fits this at all. I think it's very much going to be a story of revenge, story of duplicity, story of perspectives, and this mystery I'm playing, and what the drivers are. But I think the Chosen One prophecy, that's very Skywalker-ish. And I think, again, if you take a step back and look at the Disney perspective on it, not just the storyteller's aspect from Leslie Headland, but from Disney, I want to invest in a new era, right? I want to build a new era of Star Wars that gives me a ton of flexibility to go and playground and make TV shows and make movies and things like that. I need to create that separate content than what I have from the Skywalker saga. Bringing concepts like the Chosen One in, I think, at least at this stage of it, make that very difficult, because again, when we get to the prequels, it feels like a really foreign concept of something that's not really on their radar anymore. So I like this period of relative quiet in that space, where those are just old ideas that have been locked away in the vault.
All right, 2 more questions. Zora Allens, who was with us tonight in the chat, they probably went to bed, I would imagine, at this point, which I would have done already too. But which character are you most intrigued to learn more of?
Yeah, why don't you take this one first?
Oh, yeah. So I think the one character that I'm most interested is Jackie Lon. So that's the character played by Daphne Keene. She's the Thelan hybrid Padawan that we've seen. They touted her as being like, I don't know, not the perfect Jedi, but
she's like the perfect student though. She's
perfect Padawan, perfect student kind of character.
Right.
Definitely of interest. And then Master Soul. Like, as much as I love Adara, like a lot of these characters seem very interesting, which is great because that was what I really loved about the High Republic. When you read Light of the Jedi, you know, it wasn't until about midway, honestly, as much as I love that book, it wasn't about midway until I became vested in the characters. But once I got vested in them, holy crap, I haven't been able to detach myself.
There were like 5,000 characters you had to keep up with. Yeah, it was tough.
Right. It was a little difficult, but I love a lot of these characters, at least what we've seen so far. And most of this has come out more recently in the interviews and the way they're talking about the characters and that sort of thing. But so we'll see how that plays out in the actual series itself. But Master Soul and just JJ himself, the actor, and just his journey and what he was talking about, like playing this role and how humble he was. And it's really hard not to want to root for that character. We're going to Death Watch after this, so we'll talk about maybe, you know, who lives and who dies. That would be pretty sad if he doesn't make it through the series. But that's my answer. I'm going to say Jackie with a close second being Soul. Who do you have?
You know, honestly, it's Kalnaka right now. I'm kind of fixated on the Barash vow and what this scene is with the witches and then where he goes in the future. I don't think this is going to be a big story element or anything like that. But when I just look at what we've got released right now and what's sticking with me, it's just, I'm really curious about it. I just really want to see what that's all about. I think there's elements with May and with Osha to understand what's going on there too. I am intrigued about what the underlying reasons for all of this is and where that's going. I am still also very curious about the witches and about Mother Anastasia and to see what's going on there because we love the Night Sisters. We love this idea of witchcraft in Star Wars. It's so cool and flexible and unique and a lot of different directions they can go with it. So I know I gave like 3 characters, but it's kind of probably more Mother Anastasia and Kalnaka right now. Although I think Kalnaka will probably resolve itself pretty quickly. And so Mother Anastasia is one I'm really, really curious about.
Yeah, I'm going to throw her, if you don't mind, I'll throw her in there as my third because I'm with Mother Anastasia as well. There's something about her dynamic with May and maybe, I guess, Osha that is very interesting because we see them in the flashbacks. They're together. Like, it looks like the girls came from that witch village. And, you know, I don't know like who the mother is of the girls, but that would be something if it was Mother Anastasia was actually their mother, like she birthed them because I'm assuming that she's Force sensitive. And the girls are Force sensitive. So it would be cool to have that dynamic where the mother suddenly gave up the kids or whether she meant to or not. That would be really intriguing. But there's something about that dynamic. And I'm just more interested to see whether or not they are going to play off of her and this group of witches being part of anything that was in the High Republic, aka Path of the Open Hand, Path of the Closed Fist, whatever it is. You know, maybe they still have some of the same, you know, what if she echoes the words, you know, gifts given freely at some point, you know, and again, cool. That would be kind of cool. No one would know unless you read the books, but it would be that little sign, that little hint, you know, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, that this is where they're coming from. So yeah. Anyways, I would throw in there as a close third, just because I don't really know a whole lot about her. She's very intriguing.
Well, she was so cryptic, like back at Celebration too, like a whole year ago. And
super cryptic, very trepid about what she was trying to say, what she could say.
Oh man, and Jodie Turner-Smith is just so alluring in so many different ways. I mean, in real life, but also in this character, the way that the movements, and it's almost like this slithering dances, seductive type of like movement. It's riveting to watch and really curious. And some of the dialogue of you just have to pull the thread, right? Or, you know, who should be able to wield power. There's really interesting concepts in there that we don't know a lot about yet without any context. And like it's the way that she's delivering it and presenting this character. It's really fascinating. I'm really, really curious where they're going with this.
Yeah, Slarf has joined us. What a cool name. Slarf.
Man, the image looks kind of scaring me, though.
Yeah. I'm so damn excited. Yeah, me too, man. We'll talk about that here in just a minute. All right, last question. This is from Tom Spiegel, said, long shot, but I'm hoping the big bad of the show is Elzar Mann. So I don't know. I don't.
He's probably dead by now, but yeah.
Yeah, he's probably dead. Now, here's where I said that, you know, if you want to figure out a way, like how would he be around if you really want to kind of put the tinfoil hats on, you know, there's nothing to say that he hasn't tapped into some of what Plagueis was trying to get into eventually, which is prolonging their life. Jonesy's put the tinfoil hat on. Literally, he's put it on now. But Elzar Mann, you know, okay, we got to get there. well, crap, I can't talk about Temptation of the Force because it's not out officially, but
technically you can. The embargo's lifted.
well, there's nothing that leads me to think he's gonna go down that route. How about that? I don't want to get, because there's a whole conversation. But what I will say is, if he really wanted to go down this path, then maybe he found some of the secrets of the Sith, and he's found a way to prolong his life for 116 years, and he is the big bad. But I don't know. I think it's a fun question, but I would say it's like a 0.00001% that we would see Elzar Mann. Plus, I am the legal defense for Elzar Mann. It's on all my social media handles, and so I just can't, in good conscience, agree with this one at all.
You are also his guest artist for any kind of romance novel type of situations.
Which, by the way, as soon as I get the physical copy, I'm going to make a jacket that you can print up and replace it with the artwork that I did for Temptation of the Force.
Are you going to do like with some of the Discord people didn't put my face on there?
Oh God, no! I'm not doing that.
No.
I'm not doing that. But there's probably some kind of compensation that would have to happen if I did that. Okay. Oh boy! Before this really falls off the rails, that's the last question that we had. Death Watch. So this is a portion of the show, the segment. Very quickly, we go through the list of people, and we probably won't go name by name. But is there anybody that you see here that you feel is not going to make it out of this series?
Well, I think Indara is pretty clear she's not going to make it.
Okay, that's fair.
I'm kind of thinking that like maybe May won't make it either, like the dark side character. There's actually probably a lot. I mean, let's be honest, they're killing Jedi. So some of our, like Yord's on my list because we see him
battling the Jedi or battling someone who's holding a red lightsaber.
Right, yeah. So that seems like he might be on the short list for not making it out. I'm terrified of Master Soul dying because I'm with you. I don't want him to, but would that be really powerful for him to? But does that cause too many problems when too many really high-level masters die? So, but I'm going to go with Indara, which I think is the easy one. I think Yord doesn't make it out. And then I'm going to go with May doesn't make it out.
May and Yord? Okay.
Yeah.
I've got May on my short list. God, I have Soul on my short list, and I hate that. I really hate that because I think he's going to be that one character everybody just falls in love with. We finally saw in one of the more recent TV spots where he connects with Osha, like after they've had their confrontation and he realizes that's her and he's smiling at her and she's smiling at him. It's just so sweet. And like, right. Star Wars has done that to us so many times where we get emotionally attached to characters like that and they get axed off. I can see where that does play into it. Cause if you think about it, now you've got a master who is gone and you've got his, Padawans or essentially Padawans, right? Or students in May or in Osha, or at least Osha, now left without a master. And there's just a lot there that they could really play with if he was to pass. Idara, I think, again, and we've already talked about her kind of passing and dying, but I don't know. I think that's it. Yord, I'm with you again. I think Yord's not going to make it out of here. What
about Kamir? Does Kamir make it out?
I think Kamir makes it out because I have him. I don't have him as an acolyte. I have him more as a henchman in my head. Like he's working for the big guy and he's out there like, I don't know, maybe trying to feel out who could be next and reporting back, doing that sort of thing. So I think he does make it out of this series.
If he turns out to be a more major character, I think he dies. If he does turn out to be more of a sidekick henchman, I think he'll live. And then I guess the other one is, what about the character with the mask and the lightsaber, the Sith, whatever they are? Does that character die or survive or what?
I think whoever that person is dies.
I agree. Yep. Who kills them?
I'll tell you that in just a second.
Is that who's your Razor Crest?
So Razor Crest moment. Do you have anything for Razor? So definition of the Razor Crest moment is way back in season 2 or before season 2 of The Mandalorian. We were doing wild and crazy predictions, and I predicted that the Razor Crest was going to blow up or die, is what I said, die. And it did blow up. And we were like, oh my gosh, we'll never do that again. That's lightning striking 3 times in a row. And so now it's been a tried tradition that we just throw it out there. Like, what is the craziest thing that you think could happen? And you'll never stop talking about it if it does.
I'll go on a limb and say that we actually get Tenebris at the very end reveal himself as the master, killing or doing something with the apprentice and like revealing themselves in the shadows, not to the Jedi, but we will actually get, maybe not Tenebris, we'll get confirmation that there is a Sith master and it's someone from Legends that we actually are familiar with.
Okay. I like that. I think
probably not going on that far of a limb, but but for everything else I said, it is, because I don't think we'll see the master otherwise, except at the very end.
Well, and you're right. Like I was going to say, if that turns out to be the case, where we don't know anything about the master, and then suddenly that is a big reveal at the very end, and it turns out to be somebody like Tenebrous or even a Plagueis, if they want to play around with the timeline,
Right.
that would be cool. Like that's a big moment, I think. Is it on everybody's radar, and are people thinking about it still? Yes, I think so. But that's okay, right? It's still going to be pretty significant given what's happened.
But again, to your point before, as you progress through the season, though, does it seem like it's going in that direction? The answer could be no, and then you do get that reveal, and it does have the power. It does kind of hit you, and I think that's something that would really resonate with fans. And when you think about the other words that Headland has thrown out there of, it's a self-contained season, so we'll get closure, but there are narrative threads that still exist. That would be a giant narrative thread that we know still exists for another 100 years. So,
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's possible. Yeah.
All right. Well, my Razor Crest moment is it's not unchanged from what I've said originally. It's, but I guess I'll make an official statement again here. When Headland was first talking about the series, she kept talking about how it was not going to go the way we think. And we pointed out all kinds of reasons tonight where even the stuff that we've seen on television and in the TV spots and the trailers are probably not going to play out the way we think they are. We've kind of thrown out some different reasons of how that could go one way or the other. But I'm still subscribing to Jecki as being an acolyte. And I know that's kind of crazy, especially now that we know even more about her character. Because I made this prediction when the trailer first came out. Like I saw her and I pointed her out and I was like,
you've been
that's
here
it.
for a while. Yeah. I
said, that's it. That's the one. I think she's going to be the acolyte. But now that I know more about it, I can still get on board with it. I think there's some barriers that she's put up, or the actress Daphne Keane has put up and Leslie Headland has put up, that make it a little bit difficult. But at the same time, I can twist them and say that, if she is kind of like the perfect Padawan, but at the same time, they've talked about how she's very young and she's still growing. She seems like somebody that's very susceptible, could be persuaded in some way. She could be playing just this role of like she's playing this as a disguise, right? Her disguise is, oh, I'm the perfect Padawan, and I'm really kind of reporting in to the master. And in my head canon, going back to who kills that person at the very end, like I'm still sticking to what I said originally was at some point that person reveals himself. There's probably a battle. You get Master Soul saying, "You're not a Jedi. What are you?" kind of thing. All that continues to happen. And at the very end of it, at some point, she turns on all of them, or turns on somebody, cuts that Padawan's head off. Then the master shows up. Maybe it's Tenebrous, and he's like, "Oh, this was who I was with the whole time." The reason I say that is because in my head, what I want to see in like season 2 is us, the audience, knowing. I know he's put the hat back on. I want to see in season 2 us knowing that somebody like Jecki, even if she's not revealed in this one, that somebody like Jecki is out there, and then she's still like, we can kind of see her still playing the role of a Padawan, still as part of the Jedi Order. But then we see the other side of that, where she's going and she's having those conversations with whoever the master is, right, and all that. But and a lot of that also comes from when Leslie Headland was talking about this. She said she saw her and wanted this. She created this character as X-23 with a lightsaber. The one characteristic of X-23, for anybody that doesn't know, is that she has bouts of rage. Yeah. Like unrelentless, chaotic, just like savagery, right? And I can't see a Jedi being that. And if you're Leslie Headland and you're writing this character, where does that fit in with this? Maybe something happens where Soul dies and suddenly she turns to the dark side in a brief moment and lashes out, and that part is written into the script. But I think maybe the more, at least the answer that I'm subscribing to, is she had her in mind for being kind of this savage, dark side character that can play both sides of it. And that's a lot of where a lot of it's predicated on. So that's my Razor Crest moment.
So I'll give you, I'll extend an olive branch on this one. So I think what is, and maybe to your point, was when you have a character who seems perfect, they also tend to idealize their master. And I think her master, of course, is Master Soul at this point. She's the new Padawan, and she idolizes him. Like she thinks he's perfect, things like that. If you see someone fall from grace, or you have doubts about that, it shakes you to the core. And you're right, that could set you on a path. And I kind of like where I'm on board with this to an extent is like at the very end that she would step in and maybe fulfill or step into the role. Maybe she doesn't act out and slay a bunch of people, but the seeds of the dark side are sown, and
Mhm.
then she's the next acolyte or something like that, right? So
Right.
I do think those tropes are there, right? Where you have someone who just thinks someone's so perfect, and then they shake you to your core because you learn all of the skeletons, right? You found the skeletons in the closet. You learned some of the dirty secrets that no one really wanted to share about what happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whatever, in the situation with the Wookiees and the witches and whatever. So I think those things are all, there's ways you can get there. I think, I'm trying to be nice. I think,
No, I appreciate it.
yeah. So I think
Uh,
there's possibilities there.
Danny joined, said, "Hey, Albert and Jonesy, Patreon member Danny here. Managed to catch you guys live for a change. Thanks, Danny.
Hey,
Thanks for
Danny.
making it out, man. Good to see your name out there."
Yeah.
All right. We got to wrap this up because I've got a raid to do in SWTOR in 15 minutes, and I don't want to be late for it.
All right,
But,
where's your hype meter at?
yeah, it's pretty high, and I think it's been high ever since the announcement. I think over time, as we've gotten more and more of it, definitely has grown. And the fact that I've been in love with the High Republic. I was gonna like point to my books back here, but I'm just so into the High Republic and have been ever since day one. So I just ordered 3 more pairs of High Republic socks, by the way. But yeah, because it's based in that era, and we're seeing like vectors and the Jedi garb, and we've got Vanessa Rowe and all the other reasons that we've already talked about, the ties and the connections, and that campaign setting that I called. It's pretty high. I don't know that it's of the heights of like I was with Andor, because that one I was really excited for. But it's pretty up there, I would say. What about you?
They kind of hooked me on this one because of all of the media blitz of it, I think, too. This is where it's effective. When it's in front of you all the time, you can't help but think about it, and you can't help but getting a little bit excited. And when they put it in front of the Phantom Menace, or they put it at the end of the Phantom Menace, for the people who actually got to see it in the theater, it was like, okay, holy smokes, this is like Star Wars. And we didn't really talk about, they're going to do a screening of the first 2 episodes of The Acolyte on the 3rd, right, on Monday.
Yeah.
Yeah, so for
I'm
people
going, by the way.
all right, yeah, man, the one for me is still a little far away, even though it's in the area. But I might have to think about that one. But I can see where this is going to be an experience in the theater. And I imagine the people who got to go see it at El Capitan out in California probably had a surreal experience of like, I'm seeing new Star Wars content in the theater. And I know they did this with something else too. They do it with one of the episodes of Mandalorian or Ahsoka or something like that. I can't remember.
Ahsoka. They did it with Ahsoka.
Yeah. So, but I think this is going to be like on another level from what we saw in Ahsoka, to be honest with you. Not to discount Ahsoka or Filoni, but I mean, this kind of feels like it's on another level from a production standpoint. And like you said, very much like Andor. I would have loved to see Andor in the theater. Holy smokes, that would have been special.
Yeah, it would have been.
Yeah, but I think the hype machine's really, I mean, they've done a good job promoting this movie. And I think this is something that, I has gotten me excited about it. I was intrigued by this for a really long time, but they've really kind of put it together. It was very secretive for a long. We didn't really have a whole lot of stuff come out about this movie, of course, with the pandemic and everything else. So they've done a good job here. And I think the media stuff is really helping. It's a huge investment, which of course this next question is going to be very critical of, where do you predict this to fall in the Disney Plus TV rankings, which I'm not really sure how that works, to be honest with you. But
yeah.
What was your thought when you came up with this question?
Well, I was just thinking like, if you had to rank the series, the live action, let's just keep it to live action, right?
Yeah.
If you had to rank the live actions, where do you think this is going to end up at the end of season 1?
If it delivers on kind of the promises we have, I think it'll slot right under Andor, to be honest with you. I think it'll surpass Ahsoka and Obi-Wan Kenobi. Maybe not in totality, because I think there's certain moments of those series which are absolutely brilliant and really a lot of fun and really critical and important to Star Wars, and they did it well. But I think from the way they're framing and setting this stuff up, I'm really gonna have a hard time putting anything above Andor, having not seen it.
Yeah,
right. Because I think Andor is the gold standard as far as I'm concerned. But I think it could be in that slot just under Andor. I think it's got promise of that. And if not, I think it'll kind of fall. I think Obi-Wan and Ahsoka are kind of on the same tier in some ways, very different stories, but it could fit in that, I think, at the very least. But I think it could surpass those if it delivers on some of these promises with this new era. What about you?
Yeah, I'm 100%. Like I see it slotting in based on the potential. I see it slotting in under Andor, close to Andor. I don't see it surpassing Andor or usurping it in any way, but definitely right underneath it. And then I would probably, I might even have Mando above Ahsoka.
Oh, I can't believe I even missed a Mando. Yeah, Mandalorian. I think it could be on par with Mando and compete with that second place with Mandalorian. Yeah. Mandalorian's like my second one. I can't believe I forgot that.
No, there's, I get it though. So yeah, I would say it's probably going to fall into number 2 or number 3 when it's all said and done. I don't think it's going to, like you said, I don't think for either of us it's going to surpass
such a high bar.
Yeah, it really is. So, oh man, we did it.
We did it.
2 hours 20 minutes. About par for course.
I'm not actually surprised. Actually,
yeah,
this feels good.
But thank you everybody that came out. Holy crap, there was a crap ton of people throughout that came and went and stayed on for the entire episode. So thank you guys for making that out. I know this has been a longer one, but certainly, hopefully, this got you guys even more hype for the show.
Yeah, and I'm always hyped about all the people in our live stream. Steph, Sky, JJ Skywalker, What Up versus CPU, Reader Reborn, Skywalker's Academy, Alex, Trent, Katya, Sorallins, Star Wars Stuff Podcast, Hard Counter, Music Train, Obviously Subdued, Jorge, Slarf, Danny. Everyone, thank you so much for all of the comments. Thank you for the engagement. Thanks for sending questions. And if you're listening to this and you send us a question, thank you for sending those in as well. If you're interested in Patreon, cantinacast.com/Patreon, we have Discord as well. So the conversation will be there. We usually have a spoiler channel. So when the series comes out, you can go in there and you can speak freely about the episode, talk with other people, share your thoughts, where you think the series is going. It's a good space. Discord's full of good people as well. So that comes with your Patreon membership. So if you're looking for a place to talk Star Wars at any time of the day, we hope you'll consider that and come join us over there.
Yes. Thank you guys for doing that. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment on below. If you got a question that pops up a little bit later, feel free to leave it in the YouTube comments. And of course, go out to cantinacast.com/YouTube, sign up if you haven't already. We are going to be doing breakdowns of every episode. Those usually go for about an hour or 2 hours sometimes, depending on we're talking about. But they're no stone is left unturned on those. And we'll be doing those, I think, on Wednesdays. Starting next week.
So remember, the show comes out at 6 p.m. Pacific on Tuesdays, so 8 p.m. Central, Center of the Universe, and then 9 p.m. So prime time Star Wars on Tuesday nights. So we will see you guys on Wednesdays as a general rule.
Yep. Look at One Up said, may the loot be with you, Albert. I'm trying to get my headpiece. There's a headpiece that I'm trying to go after tonight, so I'm looking forward to that. So all right, let me get that banner off there. So all right. This weekend we've got more shows. It's too late. I don't remember what's going on, but join us back here on Sunday night for we'll do our normal thing. And then again, we'll be back on Wednesday night for the breakdown of the first 2 episodes of the Acolyte. I might try to do something Monday night after watching the first 2 episodes. I'm not really sure. It depends on how much time I got, but it might be just kind of a Patreon exclusive thing, my kind of initial thoughts based on it. So, and if Jonesy can attend, then maybe we can pull something together there as well. So, all right, Jonesy, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, thanks everyone for joining us.
All right, guys, we'll see you guys here in just a few days.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.